immortalized. Canton, Ohio, the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Today, the Hall opens its doors to 7 new members. A proud linebacker who played bigger than his size, a driving force on the famous no-name defense.
Way to come back, guys. Way to hang in there.
A resilient leader, gifted with great intelligence, who guided the Buffalo Bills to an unprecedented 4 consecutive Super Bowls. A devastating blocker and a perennial Pro Bowler. An ageless tackle, he paved the way for 7 different 1,000-yard rushers.
And Lynn Swan going for it. Swan pulls it in for a touchdown. And Swan beat his man on a bomb.
A spectacular performer, a Super Bowl MVP, born with a name befitting his graceful catches. A consistent lineman, a player that epitomized durability. A determined warrior, playing with pain became his legacy. A class of champions, the Hall of Fame class of 2001. Welcome to Canton, Ohio, and football's greatest weekend. It is the culmination of a dream, the ultimate acknowledgement of playing the game at a different level. Fans, friends, family packed in to witness the enshrinement of 7 NFL greats. And it truly is the highest honor. We're glad that we can share it with you. I'm Susie Culber alongside Tom Jackson, proud member of the Broncos Ring of Fame. Well, this class, the Magnificent 7, these are guys who are in the trenches. What makes this class so compelling?
Well, I think, Susie, the first thing you have to look at is the toughness of this group. You're talking about a Jackie Slater who played for 20 years for the same team. Ron Yeri, 15 years in this league, in the trenches, as was Mike Munchak. Lynn Swan, graceful but tough as well, instilled some of that Steeler toughness. Ron Levy, who didn't get to his first Super Bowl until he was 65 years of age. Jack Youngblood, Super Bowl 14, playing with a broken leg. It doesn't get any tougher than the guys that we see inducted, these 7 guys going into the Hall.
This is my first time here. Everywhere you turn is greatness. Do you still get goosebumps?
I get chills just being around the guys who are in this Hall, and I think that will happen forever. There's not a player who's ever played this game who doesn't dream about one day being here. So for these 7 guys, this is a dream come true.
There are currently 204 members in the Hall of Fame by the end of today. 211. 52 strong, the returnees back today, all gathered. The festivities just getting underway. Hope you'll stay with us from the Hall of Fame. Hall of Fame Festival weekend continues right through Monday night. A full complement of info to go along with the celebration. Monday Night Countdown on ESPN, 7 p.m. Eastern. Tom Jackson joins Mike Tirico and Ron Jaworski. They'll have live reports from the Rams and Dolphins, as well as talking to Bills quarterback Rob Johnson live. They'll get you set for the annual AFC NFC Hall of Fame game. It's your first look at that Rams pumped-up defense. St. Louis, Miami, 8 p.m. Eastern on ABC. Monday Night Football is back. Meet the newest additions to the Hall of Fame next as we continue from here in Canton. Stay with us.
A man started.
More recognition for the best in the business. The Pete Rozelle Radio and TV Award for Longtime Exceptional Contributions, presented to Ruin Arledge, accepted by Frank Gifford on his behalf. The Dick McCann Award for Long and Distinguished Reporting, Len Shapiro, known for his work at the Washington Post, his coverage of the Redskins, also authored a number of books. And the Daniel Reeves Pioneer Award for Innovative Ideas to George Toma, a master at his trade, the care and preservation of football's playing surfaces. Congratulations. When we come back, the driving force behind Miami's no-name defense, linebacker Nick Bonacani, takes his place in the Hall of Fame. Welcome back. Hot, sunny day here in Canton, Ohio. And today, an opportunity to understand how each one of this year's enshrinees reached the ultimate goal. Chris Berman, as entrenched in the game as any lineman, serves as our master of ceremonies. Let's now go down to Chris Berman.
Up there. So when we join, please help us out in joining everybody else watching around the world. We'll be right with them. All right, thank you, Susie Colbert. Thank you, Thomas Jackson, my compatriot for 15 years. And welcome everybody to Canton, Ohio. I have just one question for everybody over here, up there, way out there by the highway, up front, on the left flank, and on the left wing. Are you ready for some football? We all are. It's indeed a privilege and an honor to be here to witness what we are calling the Magnificent Seven, the class of 2001 to be inducted here into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. It is their day, so why don't all of us please say hello. He was the leader of Miami's no-name defense that won 2 straight Super Bowls, 8-time an All-Star Pro Bowler with Miami, and before that, the Boston Patriots. 32 interceptions, most ever by a middle linebacker. Nick Bonacotti. The first player chosen in the 1968 draft by the Minnesota Vikings, he showed why by playing 15 years and 207 games. It is no coincidence that once he became a starter his second year in 1969, Minnesota went to its first Super Bowl. They followed with 3 more. Ron Yeri. Not many with English degrees from Harvard become head football coaches. But then again, there aren't many coaches like this man. Head coach in order: New Mexico, California, William and Mary, Les Alouettes de Montréal of the CFL, the Kansas City Chiefs, the Chicago Blitz, they might have been the Blitz, and then he came to Buffalo, where from 1986 to 1997, he made the Bills winners. The only coach in history to lead his team to 4 straight Super Bowls, Marv Levy. Defensive captain of the Los Angeles Rams, he was rugged, he was reckless. He missed only 1 game in a 14-year career that saw him play in 7 straight Pro Bowls. In 1979, he suffered a broken leg in the first round of the playoffs, fitted with a cast. He then played every play of the NFC Championship game and every play following in Super Bowl 14. Jack Youngblood. His teammate with the Rams, when he retired after 20 rock-solid seasons at tackle, he had played 259 games, the most ever by an offensive lineman. Did we say rock-solid? How about all 20 seasons with one team? That's a record. 7-time Pro Bowler. He's kept 24 quarterbacks and 37 running backs clean. Jackie Slater. Defensive lineman picked in the 1982 draft. This Penn Stater was an immediate success with the Houston Oilers, starting in left guard as a rookie, a devastating blocker. He was selected to 9 Pro Bowls. Mike Munchak. He was poetry in motion, arguably as graceful a player as the NFL has ever seen. The bigger the stage, the bigger he played. He was drafted #1 by the Pittsburgh Steelers in 1974. Not coincidentally, the first year of their run that saw them win 4 Super Bowls in 6 years. MVP of Super Bowl 10, it's about time, Lynn Swann. Before we move on, though, all of us here in Canton and all of us in football had thoughts very much elsewhere this week. We lost Corey Stringer, Pro Bowl tackle for the Minnesota Vikings. Together, let us cherish his memory with a moment of silence.
As a public service, the producers of American Pie 2 recommend the following.
Get real. Call 1-800-CLASSIC today.
The X&O Superstore open for business tonight. NFL Tonight, 7:30 Eastern here on ESPN2. Mark Malone and Sean Salisbury with a complete recap of today's events. The enshrinement ceremony is just underway here in Canton. Nick Bonacani, his son Mark, on the way. Stay with us.
Hello, Mrs. Lindsay. William.
Hello, Stephen.
You're not by any chance
ESPN2. Access NFL.com for official fantasy football. Get exclusive features and real-time scoring free at NFL.com.
And welcome back to Canton. We'll rejoin Chris Berman and the enshrinement ceremonies in just a moment. Tommy, what is it that gets one of these guys into the hall? There's certainly, there's time served, there's toughness, there's character. What are the main components?
Well, I think when you talk about the intangibles, the passion with which you play the game, the integrity with which you play the game is very important in having the ultimate success that it takes to get here. When you look at this group of 7, 41 Pro Bowls between them. You're talking about 17 Super Bowl appearances. So they played the game with integrity. They were also successful. And it's not only individual success, it's making your team successful as well.
The type of players who can truly inspire their teammates and take everyone to a different level. Well, let's now go back down to Chris Berman, who introduces the commissioner of the NFL. Back to Chris.
Susie, Tommy, thank you. Welcome back to Canton. Well into his second decade now as commissioner, he has led the National Football League to unprecedented growth. Next season, we'll have 32 teams playing in 8 4-team divisions. That's just one of the things. Ladies and gentlemen, the Commissioner of the NFL, Paul Tagliabue.
Good morning and welcome to one of the greatest traditions in all of sport, the Pro Football Hall of Fame weekend here in Canton, Ohio, the birthplace of our league. Today we honor 7 men who made extraordinary contributions to this game we all love. We salute them and their families and their friends who have joined us here this weekend. We thank very, very much from the bottom of our hearts the people of Canton, the people of Ohio who make this extraordinary weekend what it is. We're ready to kick off the National Football League's 82nd season, and to paraphrase enshrinee Marv Levy, what better place than to start right here, right now. Welcome.
Thank you, Commissioner. Our shade, huh? Our first enshrinee was deemed too small for the pros. Yeah, right. From Springfield, Massachusetts, he went to work for his home state team in 1962, the Boston Patriots. And at the end of the decade, he was the AFL's all-time middle linebacker. But we best know him, don't we? From the Miami Dolphins team that over a 2-year span went 32-2. 17-0 in 1972. Certainly someone from the no-name defense played at Hall of Fame caliber. Today, we recognize that, as does my compatriot ESPN, Tommy Jackson, who knows something about linebacking. A look at Nick Buoniconti.
When I think about Nick, I think about just being totally competitive and intense in his preparation. And when the game started, he was a no-nonsense player. He was just a ferocious competitor out there.
The Miami Dolphins' no-name defense took pride in not having any individual stars, but its heart and soul belonged to Nick Buoniconti.
Nick was the kind of guy that everybody looked up to and respected because of the way that he practiced, the way that he prepared, the way that he competed.
Coming out of Notre Dame, Buoniconti was thought to be too small and too slow, but the Boston Patriots of the AFL took a chance and drafted him in the 13th round in 1962. In 7 seasons for the Patriots, Buoniconti played in 5 All-Star games before being traded to the Dolphins in 1969. In his first season in Miami, Buoniconti earned team MVP honors, but the Dolphins won just 3 games. The following season, Don Shula was named head coach.
So when Shula got there, he basically said, he told us, he says, your party days are over. And he said, you guys have a lot of very good football players on this team, but you're totally disorganized, you're totally undisciplined.
Under Shula's guidance, the Dolphins won 10 games the next season and in '71 began a string of 3 straight Super Bowl appearances, highlighted, of course, in 1972 by the perfect season.
We knew we were good, but we really didn't know we were that good. But we really didn't know because we won a lot of close games in the undefeated season, but we had one guy every game step up to make that big play that had to be made.
And that one guy in Super Bowl VII was Buoniconti.
One interception in the Super Bowl led to a touchdown that put us ahead in the ball game, and the big play in the big game, and that was Buoniconti. That's what Nick was all about, the big play in the big game.
I think if someone tracked my life, I think they would say that whenever someone issued a challenge to me, I met it head on.
Buoniconti's biggest challenge came 9 years after he hung up the pads. Nick's son, Mark, playing linebacker for the Citadel, made what appeared to be a routine tackle. It was anything but.
I called a hospital, and the neurosurgeon got on the phone. The first thing he said to me was, I'll never forget it. Your son's dislocated his neck, and he'll be a quadriplegic for the rest of his life. That's how I found out about Mark's injury. It was just like someone hit me in the face with a 2x4.
The first moments after my injury, I laid on the field, and all I wished for is for my family to be by my side, and they were that night.
I looked into his eyes, and those big baby brown eyes was just saying, "Daddy, please help." And I couldn't help him. First time in my life I couldn't help my son.
And it obviously brought us, very much closer together. Football is, in his words again, it gave him his best joy and probably the worst sorrow.
Buoniconti's on-field intensity has carried over into what has become his life's commitment. He founded the Miami Project, which has initiated groundbreaking research in the fight to cure paralysis.
I would have never been able to accomplish the things I have and be where I am if it wasn't for the love of my family and really my father, who gave up his life, again, to better mine and to really make a difference in my life.
To present Nick today, his truest teammate for the last 35 years, his son, Mark Buoniconti.
Pull the microphone to the sides, out of the way.
Thank you. Hello, Canton. Is this great or what? Dad, a few years ago you said, Mark, if I ever get elected to the Hall of Fame, I want you to introduce me. Well, here we are. And here I am, one lucky person, a kid who grew up with a hero as a dad, and a son who's been asked to introduce his father on the day of his highest honor. I'm humbled by the responsibility of saying so much for so many in so little time. These few words can never capture the feelings of all the people you've touched and inspired. Your mother, Pascalina Bonacani, your Uncle Bob, your brothers, Uncle Bob and Uncle Pete, my brother Nick and sister Gina, your many close friends, both old and new, your fellow teammates, the members of that no-name defense, and the coaches that you've had, especially Coach Don Shula. Dad, you've had labels and cliches attached to you throughout your life. Too small, not NFL material, overachiever, a quote, intelligent player, a no-name. But make no mistake about it, you're here today because of what you did on the field. It may have taken the sports writers 20 years to come around, but now the world knows what your teammates and opponents knew all along, that you were just one great football player. You once told me, I never really thought of myself as undersized. Weren't you listening to what people were saying? Maybe you were just too focused to pay attention to those things. During 14 season with the Patriots and the Dolphins, you played 183 games, had 32 interceptions, were chosen All-AFL and All-AFC 8 times, voted team most valuable player 3 times, and named to the all-time AFL team. As captain of the no-name defense, you led the Dolphins to 3 straight Super Bowls and back-to-back championships. In 1972, the stingy defense you anchored was unrelenting during the 17-0 run known as the perfect season. That team's unmatched accomplishment grows greater with each passing season. Your Hall of Fame coach, Don Shula, had this to say about you. Without a doubt, the key to our great defense in back-to-back Super Bowl seasons was the leadership of our defensive captain, Nick Bonacani. His tenacity and attention to detail made it happen. He made sure that our no-name defense was a no-mistake defense. As we know, voters to the Hall of Fame do not consider off-the-field accomplishments. But if they had, they would have found that you have world-class achievements in many areas other than football. In your first few years with the Patriots, you attended Suffolk Law School at night while practicing football in the day. Before you were a Miami Dolphin, you were already a practicing attorney in the off-season. After football, you began hosting HBO's Inside the NFL, the longest-running program on cable television. In business, you rose to the highest levels of corporate America. You became president of a Fortune 500 company, vice chairman of a pharmaceutical company, and served on the boards of several publicly traded companies. But just as remarkable as your achievements on the field and in the boardroom is your unselfish dedication to making a difference in the lives of others. And Dad, this is probably where you excel above all else. This great game of football has given our family its brightest moments and its darkest days. Dad, 85 was your lucky number, but 1985 brought some tough times for the Bonacani family. Early that year, you lost your own dad to cancer. And then in October, I had my paralyzing injury playing linebacker for the Citadel. Looking into your eyes, I saw a mask of pain and fear transform into that familiar look of determination. I knew you were getting ready for our biggest challenge. So when they started using labels for me and telling you all the medical cliches that I'd never walk again, that I'd need a machine to breathe for me, that paralysis can't be cured, once again, you didn't listen. You made a bedside promise to do anything and everything you could to help me walk again. Your promise that October day 16 years ago became the Miami Project to Cure Paralysis, the world's largest, most comprehensive spinal cord research center. It is a symbol of hope for hundreds of thousands of Americans who are waiting for a cure. Dad, you never believed the labels and limitations others ascribed to you. Instead, you faced each challenge head on and made believers out of them. So in closing, I've got a label for you that I've never heard mentioned. Dad, as I look at all the things they say you couldn't do, it seems to me that you're just not a very good listener. Who would have thought that the son of an Italian baker from the south end of Springfield, Massachusetts, will go on to run a Fortune 500 company, or that a guy with a degree in economics would be helping to make medical history, or that a 13th round pick of the fledgling AFL would today be inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Dad, you have always been by my side and have been more of a father to me than I could have ever imagined. The best father one could hope for. Whatever it is you got inside you, we see it, we feel it, and it gives each of us a little more reason to believe. Ladies and gentlemen, my hero, my friend, my dad, Nick Bonacani.
Wow. I guess I lost the bet. Mark, you're an amazing son, and Mark has lifted the spirits of thousands of people in wheelchairs who thought their lives were over because of spinal cord injury. And believe me, we are going to find a cure for spinal cord injury, and the single reason that we're going to do it is because of my son, Mark. Well, you know, I'm 60 years old. I last played 25 years ago. But from, like Mark says, from a kid who grew up in a great section of Springfield, Mass, the South End, and who was a son of an Italian baker, I am truly humbled and honored to be up here. You know, my childhood was magic. I mean, it was absolutely fantastic. And to that end, I'm going to dedicate my induction to my biggest fan. A guy who never missed a practice of mine, who drove 2 or 3 times a year from Springfield, Mass to South Bend, Indiana to see, with my mom, to see his son play for Notre Dame. My father died in 1985, and Dad, I'm dedicating my induction to you, and I know you're standing right here. To my mom who's going to be 85 this September and who cooks the best Fra Diavolo you'll ever have in your life. Mom, what can I say, but I love you. To my brothers, Bob and Pete, who are here, thanks for your understanding and for sharing our lives together. To my 2 other children, Gina, who shows her beauty through her heart, and to my son, Nick, who is a terrific linebacker in his own right, I appreciate everything you've done, and for giving us, especially for giving us those 4 beautiful grandchildren. This is wonderful. To my stepson, Justin, who has the opportunity to be something great, and to my wife, Lynn, who has re-energized me and who makes the sun shine every day in my life. Thank you, Lenny. You know, I went to Cathedral High School in Springfield, 13 years old, and there was a coach by the name of Billy Wise who looked at me at 5'8", 160 pounds, and gave me a chance to play. I started middle linebacker for Cathedral High, and I was grateful for him for everything that he taught me. But at Cathedral High, there were some guys who paved the way to Notre Dame for me. People like Joe Schiavelli, who played 13 years with the Los Angeles Rams. Great player who's not with us. Angelo Bertelli, the great Heisman Trophy winner from Notre Dame, and Mil Peppo. And from Notre Dame, from Cathedral High, I went on to Notre Dame. Now, what can I say about my Notre Dame years? Paul Hornung and I had something in common. We both tied the all-time losing record for a season at Notre Dame. We both went 2-8. Now, the difference is Hornung got the Heisman Trophy and I got hate mail. Now, but I thank Notre Dame for giving me that wonderful education and for educating me not only academically, but for educating me socially and for giving me one of my best friends ever, Richie Catenacci, is here today. But when the 1962 draft came, even though I was an All-American, my college coach decided I couldn't play professional football because the way he described it, if you tell Nick to run through a brick wall, he'll run through the wall, but he'll leave a small hole. Well, Coach, I have to tell you, I think today that hole got a little bit bigger. And from Notre Dame to the Boston Patriots, and I have to thank Mike Hollowback for giving me that opportunity to start in my second game. Actually, I have to thank Lenny Dawson because in the first game, Dallas Texans beat the Patriots 42-28, and they shook up our defense and they stuck me in the middle linebacker, and we happened to win the next game, and I stayed there forever. But I also want to thank my Patriot teammates who were so great. We were a team that went on the field and we played. And the AFL was just a great time in our lives. No one had any money. Matter of fact, one time we took off from Boston, stopped off in Buffalo, and picked up the Buffalo Bills on the same plane because we were trying to save money. But my Patriot teammates were wonderful. Babe Pirelli, Larry Eisenhower, Bob D, Jimmy Hunt, Houston Antwine, Ronnie Hall. Great players. And of course, the ambassador of them all, Gino Cappelletti. Gino's here today. And Gino someday, I think, will be standing right up here because no one could score 1,000 points in a league and be overlooked. Gino, you're going to be up here. And to Terry Buonacani for being such a great mother and for sharing in so many important moments in my life. But Patriots didn't like me enough. They decided they were going to ship me off to Miami. Now, who the hell wants to play in Miami? It's 100 degrees, 100% humidity, and you're not supposed to play football. You're supposed to go to the beach. But I got lucky. I had an owner by the name of Joe Robbie who gave me a contract that I needed. And then we won 3 ball games. But things started to change a little bit in 1970. In 1970, they brought down a coach from Baltimore. And this coach was a little obstinate. He wouldn't let us do what we wanted to do. He told us it was his way or the highway. And that guy is here today, the winningest coach, and you've already met him, Mr. Don Shula, Coach. But the Dolphin years from 1970 to 74, I think they speak for themselves. For when you talk about the greatest teams in history, and there are so many represented here by so many great Hall of Famers, the Dolphin team is right at the top. Not only did we accomplish what no other team in history accomplished, go undefeated in 72, but when you look at the record in 72, 73, and 74, this football team only lost 6 games. 6 games. And in the process, they sent some incredible people here to Canton. The toughest, most rugged fullback I've ever seen, Larry Zonka. the most graceful receiver. And Lenny Swan, when I look at you, I look at Paul Warfield. And the most unselfish quarterback I have ever been around, Mr. Bob Greasy. And a tandem of Little and Langer that really set the fear in every defensive player's heart that they played against. And now I know for sure there's going to be one more offensive guy who will be up here because he deserves it, and that's Bob Kuchenberg. And Bob, we're going to wait the day when you're up here. But you know something, Coach? I hate to say this, but we did have a defense. Where are you? We did have a defense, honestly. Now, we had a defense that would out-hit you, outplay you, and a defense that would out-think you. We had a defense that had a Bill Stanfield who had 18 and a half sacks one year, and it's 10th record, it's 10th ranked in the history of the NFL. We had a guy named Manny Fernandez who in Super Bowl VII made 17 unassisted tackles, and that record still stands. And we had a safety duel by the name of Jake Scott and Dick Anderson, who's here today. That is the best defensive duel I have ever seen in my life. And we had a coach who may someday be in the Hall of Fame, a defensive coach that most say is a genius, Bill Arnsparger. So, to my no-name defense comrades, number 25, Tim Foley. Number 26, Lloyd Mumford. Number 57, Mike Colin. Number 59, Doug Swift. Number 53, the late, great Bob Matheson. Number 83, Vern Den Herter. Number 75, Manny Fernandez. Number 72, Bob Hines. Number 84, Bill Stanfield. Number 13, Jake Scott. And number 40, Dick Anderson. And number 45, Curtis Johnson. To you guys, I say that when you go in the Hall of Fame and when you look at my bust, you're not looking at the bust of Nick Buoniconti. You were looking at the bust of the no-name defense. You were looking at the bust of guys who are some of the greatest defensive players in the history of the game. And I'll tell you what, I am just so honored to have been part of that group. To the fans in Miami, believe me, when you talk about the 12th man on the field, it's the fans. Because as the players will tell you, as you stand in that tunnel 5 minutes before that ball game, your palms are sweating, your stomach is churning, your head is banging, and all of a sudden you get that electricity coming from those stands. It totally energizes you. And believe me, the Miami fans were just that, and to them, I am just so grateful. To my family at HBO, 23 years doing this show on Inside the NFL. I hope none of you guys take our tips and bet on games. But to Ross Greenberg, Rick Bernstein, Dave Harmon, and my co-host Chris Collinsworth, Danny Marino, who will definitely be standing up here one day, Jerry Glanville, and last but not least, of course, the guy from right down the road in Alliance, Ohio, Mr. Cool himself, Lenny Dawson, who's here. And I want to thank Wayne Huizenga because I think Wayne has carried on the great tradition of the Miami Dolphins, and that's so important. Well, it looks like the final chapter in my professional life has been written. It was a challenge. I took the challenge head on. It was a mountain, and I climbed the mountain. But as I close that book on my professional career, as my son Mark says, the biggest challenge and the highest mountain is yet to be climbed. You know, I wear the Super Bowl ring, which is the only ring ever produced that says the Miami Dolphins were undefeated and were perfect. I would trade this ring in and all my individual accomplishments if one thing could happen in my lifetime. My son Mark dreams that he walks. And as a father, I would like nothing more than to walk by his side. Thank you so much.
The message, don't tell a man with a heart like Nick Buoniconti that you can't do something.
Well, what we've seen is a capsule of what this weekend is all about. It's about the heart and the emotion of being inducted into the Hall of Fame. And certainly when you listen to Mark Buoniconti talk about his love and his admiration for his father, I think we were both touched by that so much here. And the dedication to be great carries over not only what Nick Buoniconti did on the football field, but I think even more so what he's done since he's retired in terms of Mark and his injury.
And all the successes that Mark ran down. And one of the most impressive things was, naturally, when you see Mark in a situation, you want to feel sorry for him. They don't allow that for 1 second.
And I think that's passed down from his dad. His dad has remained upbeat. You know, Mark talked about the fact that he dedicated himself years ago to the fact that I will do everything I have to do to help you get back to walking. And I think he has held true to that promise that he made to his son.
We expected it to be powerful. It certainly was. As we continue here from Canton, one of the toughest tackles in NFL history, an All-Pro 6 years in a row, Ron Yary. His enshrinement is next.
USC may now be known as Tackle University because Anthony Munoz, Ron Mix, and now Ron Yary are all Hall of Famers. Consistent? Oh yeah, we think so. With Ron Yary at tackle, the Minnesota Vikings won 11 division titles. Here's Steve Cyphers.
It was just a high school game, but it was the first one a shy, curious 7th grader ever saw.
We snuck into the game and got by the guards, and I went up into the bleachers, and when I saw tackle football, I knew that was my destiny. I wasn't very good my first year. I had guys that are half my size used to beat the heck out of me. But I still loved the physical part of the game. I just loved being knocked down. I loved knocking other guys down. And then I was very shy, so by putting on a helmet and putting on those shoulder pads, nobody knew who I was and could see me. So I felt comfortable, and I could let go a little more because of that.
But even in disguise, Ron Yary became somebody. 7 times a Pro Bowler. In agile, explosive fashion, he anchored a Viking line that went to 4 Super Bowls.
Never set goals for myself. I just tried to do what my coach expected of me. If they said block this guy in this play, I tried to block him to the best of my ability and handle him. Actually, it was to dominate the guy for many years. I tried to dominate the guy.
Was there a guy you couldn't block?
In the beginning of my life, for the first, until I was about 32, 33 years old, there was nobody that was any good. I didn't think much of anyone. But then as my career, the last part of my career, everybody was great.
He stayed for 15 years, content with the anonymity that came with paving the way for others' fame.
That was a perfect position for me because I didn't want any of the attention and the applause and everything else like that.
Hall of Fame voters accommodated him. 13 times Yary was on the ballot. 13 times he didn't make it. But last year, the Vikings organization spearheaded a grassroots campaign to get voters' attention. Now Yary was Fran Tarkenton or Chuck Foreman. Now others paved his way.
I was humbled by the fact that all these people came to represent me for an enshrinement this year.
Yary calls his career a fairy tale, a career that is finally complete with a happily ever after ending.
When I was playing, I was always patted on the back and I had all this adulation. And a lot of times in life, it's good to have people tell you no when you want something badly. I think it's sweeter now that I've been honored with this great tribute than having received it 15 years ago.
Thank you, Steve. To present today, Ron Yary for enshrinement, a man who ought to know. 26 years, the offensive line coach of the Vikes, John Michaels.
Being a line coach, you notice I have this stuff printed out. My wife taught me to read just before I got up here, so It should go pretty quick. I have 3 minutes to talk about Ron, which is not a long time unless you're hanging or making a speech. And I feel like I'm hanging right now. There were two things that held Ron back from making the Hall of Fame earlier. One of them was the media's love for our great defense, which was right. They were right in doing that. And the second, and probably the most important thing, was having me as his line coach, but not necessarily in that order. Some of his best football was played every day at practice. He had the likes of Eller, Marshall, Page to contend with as a rookie. He recognized his ability by taking turns lining up against Ron to test him. He withstood every challenge. He had every excuse in the world to roll over and play dead, but chose to rise to every challenge and improve because of it. He was the cornerstone of our blocking patterns. He never had help. He was always isolated. We knew that he would best his opponent with his strength, ferocity, and intelligence. Ron's stance was not a thing of beauty. In fact, I had another coach ask me why I didn't try to change it. My reply was why. He does all we ask and more from the stance that he has. Ron was responsible for teaching me that you can't force some people into molds. And this helped me tremendously with other not-by-the-book players. My favorite Erie story is one that occurred during a Rams game when Ron was having some difficulty. And he's heard this story before, but I can't tell it enough because it helped me be a better coach. He was having some trouble, and it may have been Jack Youngblood he was playing against. He came off the field after a bad series, and I was waiting there. He sat down on the bench, and I began my tirade. I think in the middle of this one-sided talk, I made reference to my playing ability and how I would have handled this situation with no trouble. I made a few more references to my skills when Ron, who was sitting down at the time, looked me right in the eye and stated very quietly, "John, you must have been a hell of a football player." The bench erupted on either side of him as people burst out laughing. Needless to say, my credibility at that time was shot to hell. Ron Yeri made it extremely difficult for the linemen who followed him. He had given me a look at offensive line play few coaches ever see. His self-confidence was out parallel. The situation was critical and yardage essential. He wanted the play to go over him and made no bones about it. He had the strength and ability to go beyond what we wanted, and he did it. The real truth of the matter is that I coached Ron Yeri in name only. He was a self-starting offensive terror that few people have had the good fortune to work with. He has never until now received the accolades and honor that he has deserved. And this point that I'm going to make next will probably be refuted by most of the defensive people. He labored in a fog of misunderstanding of the position and lack of comprehension of what these people do. When he did his job, the running back or quarterback got all the glory. But if he failed to do his job, all hell broke all over him. I would like to thank everyone responsible for Ron Yeri's induction and him for forgiving me my all past transgressions and allowing me this great honor, and most of all for being my friend. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, guys. Thank you. Thank you, Ken. Thank you all. Your hospitality has been overwhelming. A few weeks after it had been announced that my career had been honored with this great tribute, I received an unexpected congratulatory postcard from a high school teammate of mine, Stan Cleveringa, which reads, "If one advances confidently in the direction of his dreams and endeavors to live the life which he has imagined, he will meet with a success, unexpected in common hours." Today, I'm here to tell my family, my coaches, my teammates, and my friends that I lived the life that I had imagined. I advanced confidently in the direction of my dreams, and today, with many of you present, we have come here to Canton, Ohio, to celebrate and to share this great honor on what I consider to be football's most hallowed ground. In retrospect, as I look at this life that I had imagined in football, it is evident to me that the guidance, the support, and the contribution that each of the following mentors has provided me has led to today's Hall of Fame induction. What I've accomplished in my life, both on and off the football field, is a result of their leadership. For Ron Yeri, the football player, and Ron Yeri, the citizen, is the sum accomplishment of many people, a few of whom I'd like to mention to you today. I am grateful to my mother and father for having the common sense of knowing when to push me, their approval when I was on the right tack, and their reticence to stain when I was not. As I have matured, I've come to appreciate them more, especially today as I reflect and survey my past. To my coaches individually, I wish to thank my high school coach, Don Ashton, for getting an incomprehensible 17-year-old boy to grasp the meaning of sportsmanship, and equally important, in getting him to understand what sportsmanship is not. Don taught his players that sportsmanship is the celebration of your team's victory. It is not the celebration of the other team's defeat or any individual's demise. To Coach McKay, thank you for giving me a scholarship to the University of Southern California and the opportunity to compete against the very best players that college football had to offer. Coach McKay, with the help of his assistant coaches, gathered me together and made me into the football player that I became. 34 years after I played for Coach McKay and in serious ill health, he again came to my aid and assisted me with getting inducted into this year's Hall of Fame class. As many of you know, Coach McKay passed away on June 10th of this year. He will be missed and remembered for all he has done for me. For no one makes it into the Hall of Fame on his own. To my offensive line coach, Dave Levy. Dave, with a style and wit all your own, you taught players that a mistake made with an honest effort is best understood by everyone on the team when it is expressed to them with humor. In other words, don't carry the weight of your mistakes with you. Remember, they all count, but none of them count too much. Thank you, Dave. To Marv Goo, one of the greatest college football coaches of all time, and never has one coach done so much to help so many college players reach their full potential. And never has one coach meant so much to a great university. It has been said by my teammates that I was an intense player. If there is any truth in that description of me, then I owe any measure of that trait to Marv Goo. I would like to thank Mike Giddings, another of my college coaches. Mike, I know what you did last winter, and I know that I would not be here today without your help. Thank you, Mike. And again, for no one makes it into the Hall of Fame on his own. To Bud Grant, Fran Tarkington gave the most accurate, simplest, and highest accolade any head coach can receive from an active player when he stated in a conversation among teammates, if you can't play for Bud, you can't play for anyone. We all shook our head in agreement. In other words, as the Army recruiting jingle goes, with Bud, you could be all that you could be. To Jerry Burns, the offensive coordinator for the Minnesota Vikings. On Sunday afternoon, when the Vikings took the playing field, we were always prepared. We never lost the game because of Coach Burns, but we sure won many. Throughout my career, I never heard a single player ever question a play or any aspect of his game strategy. 20 years after having played for Coach Burns, he gave graciously of his time and helped me get inducted into this year's Hall of Fame class. And again, for no one makes it into the Hall of Fame on his own. Having played for the Minnesota Vikings for 14 seasons, there was no one else I could ask to introduce me today other than my line coach, John Michaels. And no one could get a big head with my line coach. He always expected more out of players. driving them to reach the highest standard of their ability until they became the very best players that they could become. Yet another reason why I stand before you today. And to Donnie Holler, my closest friend, regardless of my football career, if it had not been for Donnie's enthusiasm and assistance, I would never have been inducted today. The luckiest 2 days of my post-football career life were the days that I met my lovely wife, Jamie. Stand up, stand up. And the day that I met Donnie Holler. So again, at 55 years old, I acknowledge another mentor who, at least for me, has redefined the true meaning of the word friendship. I've also had the good fortune to play alongside of some great teammates, a few of which should have preceded me to this podium. Out of respect for their great careers and their contribution to football, I would like to acknowledge them now. To Jim Marshall, the greatest Viking leader of all time. Carl Oler, Mick Tingelhoff, and Chuck Foreman. Certainly, if my career warrants or merits induction, so does theirs. And I'd like to thank Red McCombs at this time for all that he has done for me. And I'd like to thank another friend of mine, John Turney. I'd like to leave everyone with my personal insight about the game of football that we honor today and what makes football the great all-American sport. Every play and every block that I ever made was to help our running back gain more yards or our quarterback and receiver complete the pass. Not for individual glory, but for the benefit of the greater good, the success of the team. This is the creed of the offensive lineman that defines the spirit, the American spirit, which is built into the fabric of football. All men who have played this game at any level identify with this creed, whether it is a kid on a high school football team or the great NFL player. For no other sport in the world can offer up to its participants this internal yearning that exists within all men. This creed, this all-American spirit, this yearning inside of all men in which I speak of is called sacrifice. And it is in the sole possession and the very essence of American football. Therefore, if I can leave anyone with one thought, I hope you will remember this. To those of you who unselfishly taught me everything you knew, I owe it all. And beyond anything else, you taught me that no one makes it into the Hall of Fame on his own. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Just a reminder that football is a team game, and he certainly sacrificed. He missed only 2 games because of injury in 15 seasons.
Susie, as I listen to Ron Yeri, you can't help but be struck by the fact that these gentlemen seem to have lived by and played by another code, a code that had honor to it. It was all about sacrifice, as Ron Yeri said, playing for your teammates, maybe without getting the recognition that a skilled player would get on the offensive line. And it's something that I think has to be restored to the NFL now. And listening to Ron Yeri, boy, what a great thing it would have been to play with players like Ron Yeri and even going back to Nick Buoniconti.
And officials are working on restoring that sportsmanship this year. They will pay particular focus to that. As we continue here from Canton, only the 18th coach to be inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame, Marv Levy, enshrined next. Stay with us as we continue from Canton.
The Bassmasters.
What are you guys doing?
In 1954.
And Marv Levy joins this distinguished list, most Super Bowl appearances by a head coach, Marv Levy, of course, with 4 straight. And appears to be the magic ingredient here. Take 4 teams to the big game, and you get in. Dan Reeves, not eligible just yet. When we come back from Canton, Marv Levy had a way of keeping everybody loose. The cerebral coach will hear what he has to say. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Fred McGriff, the crime.
Welcome back. Packed house, enjoying a hot summer day here on the hallowed ground, the Hall of Fame in Canton, as we turn things back over to our Master of Ceremonies, Chris Berman.
Welcome back to Canton. Okay, Buffalo. Buffalo, do you know what time it is? Oh, yeah, you do. I think it's time to circle the wagons. It is fitting that the parade of Buffalo Bills that we will be seeing over the coming years is headed by their lovable coach, who retired in 1997 at a very young age of 72. 4 straight Super Bowls. We haven't seen it before. We may never see it again. Greg Garber has more on Marv Levy.
He graduated Phi Beta Kappa from Coe College in Iowa and matriculated to Harvard Law School. But after 3 weeks, Marv Levy called his father to inform him of a life-altering decision.
I told him fairly bluntly, I'm leaving and I want to be a football coach. 30 seconds of the most painful silence you can ever imagine followed, and then he said simply, be a good one.
154 victories and 4 Super Bowls later, he never lost his love of academics, and that became the foundation of his unique coaching philosophy.
Let's go, guys. We're going to knock their ass off.
Ronald Reagan was dubbed the great communicator. Marv ought to be dubbed the great communicator 1A.
Hey, you over-officious jerk!
I love English, the language. No one had a better command of it than Winston Churchill.
Some of his pregame speeches, he brought Winston Churchill into it, Patton. I could go on and on.
Let us now conduct ourselves so that the British Empire should last for 1,000 years. People would still say, this was her finest hour.
Look around at one another with a dumbfounded look on our faces as to what in the heck did he just mean by that?
In 1986, Levy's first season in Buffalo, the Bills were mired in a 22-game road losing streak. As they prepared for a game at Kansas City, the old high school history teacher gave a lesson.
I gave them the story about how Hitler had nearly conquered the world.
In 1936, Adolf Hitler had the greatest war machine ever devised on the face of the earth. He was better organized, he had better leaders, they were better trained, they were better equipped.
I said, but he didn't win the war, he lost in Russia.
But in 1941, Berlin stood in ruins and Hitler was beaten.
You know why he lost the war? And let them be perplexed.
Because he couldn't win on the road.
If you ask them what it takes to be a champion, they'll always say, if you want to be a champion, you have to win on the road. They heard, they listened, and most of all, they remembered.
Where would you rather be? Right here? Right now?
Where else would you rather be
than right here?
Right now.
Super Bowl 25, the closest Super Bowl ever, a game celebrated for its famous finish. Celebrated by everyone except the Buffalo Bills.
After the game, 4 lines from that poem 50 years ago came to mind for me by an old Scottish warrior. It went, "Fight on, my men," Sir Andrew said. "A little I'm hurt, but not yet slain. I'll just lie down and bleed a while, and then I'll rise and fight again."
It moved me almost to tears. It does capture, beyond the shadow of a doubt, his indomitable spirit, his indomitable will to win.
And then there was Super Bowl 26, another loss, and Super Bowl 27, another, and finally the loss in Super Bowl 28. Somehow, through the pain, there was perseverance. The Bills reached an unprecedented 4 consecutive Super Bowls.
Never give in.
Never,
never,
never.
It's a fumble. He had it knocked out of his hand.
That was the signature play, the abiding play of the Marv Levy era.
A direct reflection of Marv Levy.
It had no impact on the outcome of the game, but it had great impact on the rest of the lives of those football players to see that example. It showed courage, spirit, never say die attitude.
Way to come back, guys. Way to hang in there.
The journey has been too much fun, too gratifying to say that because we didn't win a game, all of that means nothing. Absolutely not. It means a lot to me.
Great day for football. Great day for football, man. Great day for football.
To present Coach Levy is a man who has a magic touch. As president now of the Indianapolis Colts, it is no surprise to see them in the playoffs, just as it was no surprise to see the Carolina Panthers make it to the NFC title game in the second year of their existence. That was during his tenure there. But what he did as general manager of the Buffalo Bills is purely assemble one of the great teams in the modern era. Not one of the least most important moves, obviously, is his hiring of Marv Levy as coach. He drafted beautifully, but yet in the midst of the chaos of the draft, amazingly, always had time to talk to a certain Buffalo cab driver to let him, whoever he may be, in on just a few secrets. Ladies and gentlemen, to present Marv Levy, Bill Polian.
Enshrinees, honored guest, Commissioner, our good friend and benefactor, Ralph Wilson, ladies and gentlemen, and that special group of players, fans, coaches, and staff who make the Buffalo Bills family so unique. It is said that leadership is that unique quality which enables special people to stand up and pull the rest of us over the horizon. By that, or any other definition, Marv Levy is one of the greatest leaders this game has ever known. His incredible vision for what his teams and players could become. And there are many seated in front of us here today who I think will be up on this podium before long. His magnificent ability to articulate that vision. His boundless kindness and empathy for his players and associates, and his unconquerable will to persevere no matter what the obstacle or odds, left an indelible mark on those of us privileged to be led by him. His famous Marvisms reflected in a few short sentences: a person, a philosophy, a role model, not only for us, but because of his genius as a teacher, through us, for generations to come. Here are just a few. Everyone wants to win. The special person has the will to prepare to win. What you do should speak so loudly that no one can hear what you say. Adversity is an opportunity for heroism. Expect rejection, but expect more to overcome it. Words not only for winning, but for living. And words that remind us not only of the lessons learned and battles fought, but of the profound respect and affection we have for their teacher. Cicero wrote that friends multiply joy and divide sorrow. There wasn't very much sorrow in our days together. And Marv, your friends are here today to thank you and multiply your joy as you take your rightful place among the game's immortals. Perhaps the most famous Marvism of all is the most appropriate today, and you've seen it already. Where would you rather be than right here, right now? Marv, there's no place in the world we would rather be than right here, right now with you. This winter, the great Jerry McGee of San Diego captured in a few eloquent sentences why Marv Levy will be enshrined here today. They bear repeating. Marv Levy ennobled the coaching profession. Marv Levy ennobled the game of football. Marv Levy ennobled everyone with whom he came in contact. On behalf of all of us, and all of those privileged to have called him coach, it is my great honor to present for induction into the National Football League Hall of Fame my treasured friend and the finest man I know, Coach Marv Levy.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. It's been a long trip from the corner of 71st Street and Stony Island Avenue on the south side of Chicago to Canton, Ohio. It's taken me 76 years. But in the words of an old song, I wouldn't have missed it for the world, because on every step of this joyous journey, I've been accompanied by some remarkable companions. Many of them are here today, and although there are others who are unable to be here, I'll always know exactly where to find every one of you, right here, in my heart forever. The Pro Football Hall of Fame is a hallowed institution, and I feel some indescribable emotions today upon becoming an inductee along with these 6 other men who have contributed so much to the game we all revere. Our welcome in Canton by everyone here has been overwhelming. Thank you for making this such a memorable day in my life. I'm grateful to the Hall of Fame Board of Selectors, those respected members of the national media, including Buffalo's Larry Felser, for allowing me to join the company of those who have entered this hall before me. When I first walked out onto the practice field as a high school assistant football coach, exactly a half-century ago next month, men like Jim Thorpe, Bronco Nagurski, Sid Luckman, and Marion Motley were mythical gods. They still are. And I tread this ground with great reverence for them and for all who reside here. Never did I dream that someday I might be invited to share these same lodgings with them. How could it happen? Well, it's because of some wondrous people without whose love, abilities, and counsel I'd not be standing here today. My father, Sam, by his lifelong example, displayed for me the virtues of an honest day's work and of great personal courage. You, as avid football fans, undoubtedly have witnessed many exciting runs from scrimmage, but the greatest run I ever knew of was by my father, who during World War I, along with his comrades from the storied 4th Marine Brigade, raced several hundred yards into withering machine gun fire across the wheat fields at Bellewood in France. Their valor on that day, June Day in 1918, succeeded in halting the German army advance just 25 miles from Paris. He was my hero even before I was born. One day, many years later, I telephoned my father to tell him I was leaving Harvard Law School and that I wanted to be a football coach. 30 seconds of painful silence followed, and then the old Marine said simply, "Be a good one." I hope I haven't disappointed him. My dear mother, Ida, enjoyed more peaceful pursuits, and although she never went beyond first grade in elementary school, she had read the complete works of Shakespeare and countless others. And from her, I acquired an appreciation of literature and of the worthy deeds which great literature inspires. Both Sam and Ida have been gone for many years now, but I feel their presence with me here today. And because of them, I have my sweet sister Marilyn, who is indeed here to share this occasion with me. In her, you'll find the best qualities of our parents. Lucky lady. Today, fond memories are flashing through my mind. I still recall the fearsome exhortations, look it up, Thurman, of my
with my high school coach, Nate Wasserman, and another great Chicago high school coach, Joe Cupsonet. I remember my teammates at South Shore High School, and I remember with pride those 21 classmates whom I joined when we all enlisted in the Army Air Corps and the day after we graduated high school in 1943. Nothing can stop the Army Air Corps. Told you I'd sing up here, fellas. 19 of us came home after the war. The other 3 remained forever young. 2 close friends from my high school days are here today, Herb Melnick and Nick Klavis. What great friends. I remember my teammates at Coe College, and I remember with affection my college football coach, Dick Clausen. He showed me what a noble profession coaching can be. It was my privilege to play for Dick Clausen and later to serve on his staff at my alma mater and then at the University of New Mexico, where I got to coach Don Perkins, who became the first in that string of great Dallas Cowboys running backs. I remember fondly the warm-hearted eloquence of a brilliant educator, Davis Y. Paschal, president of the College of William and Mary. As a head coach in professional football, I have worked for 3 different owners, men of impeccable integrity. First was Sam Berger of the Montreal Alouettes in the Canadian Football League. The 2 Grey Cup championships I shared with that distinguished gentleman, with those superb players and uplifting fans in Montreal, leave me with treasured memories. Merci, mon ami. In 1978, Lamar Hunt, an NFL legend, hired me to coach the Kansas City Chiefs and players like Tom Condon, Fuzzy Kramer, and Joe Delaney. I will always value my association with Lamar and the fine people in Kansas City. And then there is Buffalo's Ralph Wilson. I worked for him for 12 glorious years, but he wasn't my boss. He was my friend, and he remains my friend. His contributions to this game are unbounded. He deserves to be enshrined here in Canton, and may that day come soon. The rookie general manager who brought this then out of work 61-year-old coach, 18 years his senior, to Buffalo was Bill Polian, who honors me by being my presenter today. Together, Bill and I decided to employ as our director of player personnel some obscure USFL scout. His name was John Butler. Bill Polian and John Butler, the 2 best general managers in football. Smart, honest, witty, energetic, astute, incredibly capable. To them and to personnel directors Bob Ferguson, A.J. Smith, Dwight Adams, Norm Pollum, and their excellent staff of scouts, I am indebted for that parade of talented, high-character players whom I am so proud to have coached. I sure didn't coach them alone. How fortunate I was to work with the men who served on our coaching staff, several of whom are here today. Tom Bresnahan, Bruce DeHaven, Don Lawrence, Dick Roach, Dan Sakanovich, and Elijah Pitts' widow, lovely Ruth. So is Ed Abramowski, who was the Bills' head trainer for more than 30 years, along with coaches like Ted Marchibroda, Walt Corey, Ted Cottrell, Charlie Joyner, Chuck Lester, Rusty Jones, Jim Schaffner, and Dan Henning. They are all representative of a coaching staff which is unparalleled. Our secretaries, Nina and Nancy, that includes you. I will never forget that first time I walked into the Buffalo Bills team meeting room in early November of 1986 upon being appointed in mid-season to take over as head coach. Sitting in that room were a young Jim Kelly, Andre Reed, Bruce Smith, Kent Hall and Darrell Talley were there, great leaders. So were Jim Richard, Pete Metzlars, Will Wolford, Dwight Grain, Fred Smerlis, Mark Kelso, and Mark Pike. Soon to join them, Steve Tasker, Shane Conlon, Cornelius Bennett. Thank you, Bill, for that trade, by the way. Howard Ballard, Thurman Thomas. Thank you, John Butler. Kenny Davis, Henry Jones, Phil Hansen, and speedy receivers like Don Beebe and James Lofton. Each of those guys could run the minute in 57 seconds. Time him. Then came Glenn Parker, John Fina, Chris Moore, Steve Christie, Chris Spielman. Thank you, Ohio State University in Canton. How lucky can a man get? What an odyssey I lived with those men, with their teammates and coaches, with all the wonderful people in the Bills organization, and with those incomparable Buffalo Bills fans. For 6 consecutive years, they led the NFL in attendance. Who cared if it was bitter cold or if an angry snowstorm was raging? Their spirits were as tough as linebackers. Their hearts were as warm as the thermal underwear I wore during those January playoff games in Orchard Park. And what about those great players and coaches against whom we competed so fiercely? I am so proud to have walked the opposite sideline from Hall of Fame coaches Don Shula, Tom Landry, Bill Walsh, Bud Grant, Chuck Noll, and Joe Gibbs, and to have walked the same sideline as an assistant to a coach from whom I learned so much and to whom I owe so much, the inimitable George Allen. And there are those who are closest to me who sustained and encouraged me, even during moments of searing disappointment. My precious wife, Franny, the happiest when we won, the saddest when we lost, the quickest to shed a tear or to wipe away one of mine. She has brought me love and joy, and like her, a beautiful daughter. My darling daughter, Kimberly, arrived here just last night from Europe so that she could share this day with me. You coaches out there, may all your players have Kimberly's energy and her spirit and be as devoted as she is. And to my former wife, Dorothy, who was with me during my earlier years of coaching, I'm indeed grateful for all we shared. Franny, Kimberly, Dorothy, Marilyn, not one of them ever gained a yard or made a tackle. But without their love, I wouldn't be here today. My family, all girls, is here. Someone once lamented that given my enthrallment with this game, it is a shame that I never had a son. Well, he was wrong. He was wrong. Don't tell me I never had a son. I've had thousands of them, of every size, shape, color, faith, and temperament, and I love them, every one. And because of them, I still hear echoes from those sounds which glorify this game. I hear the cheers of the crowd as Thurman or Andre goes hurtling into the end zone, or as Bruce sacks yet another quarterback. I hear the grunts and collisions out on the field of play. I hear Jim Kelly calling cadence at the line of scrimmage. I hear Kent Hull's confident Southern drawl as he relays our line blocking schemes to his teammates up front. I hear the thundering footsteps of young men as they streak down the field to cover a kickoff. No one ever did it better than two men here today, Steve Tasker and Mark Pike. And even now, I hear the distant strains of college fight songs. Cheer, cheer for old Notre Dame, the sturdy Golden Bear, roll Alabama, 10,000 men of Harvard, on brave old Army team. And finally, I hear words spoken to me more than 50 years ago by a man whose memory I cherish. He was my basketball coach and my track coach at Coe College. His name was Harris Lamb, and I will conclude my remarks today by repeating for you what he said to me so many years ago. To know the game is great. To play the game is greater. But to love the game is the greatest of them all. Harris, my dear friend, I have truly loved this game, and I love everyone who has shared this passion with me. Thank you all for enriching my life. Thank you.
If there was any question how it seemed like the Bills could go to the Super Bowl 4 straight years and be as resilient, there's your answer.
Well, Marv Levy is absolutely mesmerizing, and I think he absolutely reflects everything that is noble about the coaching profession. And great coaches are not only great teachers of the game, but they are great teachers of life. And I think we got a glimpse today of the kind of humor and passion and integrity that he has carried with him as a head coach. If I was a player, I could sit and listen to Marv Levy and listen to him every day for a decade and never get tired of it.
And if it's debated 1,000 times, we could finally put it to rest that it doesn't matter in the scope of things how much fun he had and how gratifying it was that they lost. It doesn't matter where he stands in the history of this league.
Well, Susie, there's much to be learned by losing, as all of us who have played this game know. And the one accomplishment that I think will stand in history is the fact that he went to 4 straight Super Bowls. That I don't think that'll ever be done again.
And it was so clear how much all the people behind the scenes meant to Marv Levy. We go back to defense next. Jack Youngblood on tap. Speed, strength, technique, 7 straight Pro Bowls. Stay with us. We'll be back from Canton.
Okay, welcome back to Canton, and I have a question for you. Broken leg? Broken leg. Who cares about a broken leg? Who cares? We have playoff games to win and a Super Bowl to play in. If toughness is a prerequisite for the Hall of Fame of professional football, then Jack Youngblood sure had that. With more, here's Chris Mortensen.
Jack Youngblood's home holds barely a memento of his Hall of Fame football career, fitting since Jack Youngblood never thought he would have a Hall of Fame football career. Growing up a 200-pound defensive lineman in rural Florida will humble a player, and such lofty notions never even existed.
I was not expecting to have the opportunity to go and play at NFL level. I was told that maybe you'll be drafted in the 5th, 6th, 7th round. So I had made plans. In fact, I had taken a job in Atlanta. Was going to finish the degree in finance. I was going to go be a banker if it didn't work out.
Instead, it was the Rams who banked on Youngblood. For 14 seasons, number 85 earned a reputation as one of his era's most skilled defensive linemen. But it was Youngblood's durability that was the stuff of legend. He played in 201 consecutive games, but it was during the Rams Super Bowl run of 1979 that his toughness was personified. After breaking his leg in the first half of a game against the Cowboys, Youngblood not only returned to play the second half, but the next 2 games as well.
Clarence Shields goes in with me, the doctor, to take x-rays of it. And he comes out, and I'm sitting on the table, and he's got the film in his hand. He said, "Jack, you got a broken fibula." I said, "Doc, I've told you that." I said, "It's broke." I said, "Tape this thing." The thought is that this is an opportunity. This is a divisional playoff. We've been here several other times, and one place or another, we've stumped our toe. We hadn't gotten through. We hadn't done what we wanted to do. This is another opportunity, and if I can go and contribute, if I can go and play, I want to.
Everybody makes a big deal about him playing with the broken leg and all that. Hey, man, Jack Youngblood came out there more days with fingers dislocated that he just pulled back in and taped together and just kept rolling. You know, he got beat up. He was throwing his body around like you wouldn't believe, and we all saw it, and he loved it.
You did what you had to do in that arena, in that environment. But I didn't try to project that image. I don't see myself as being a tough guy. I see myself as someone who can
take care of the responsibility can get the job done, whatever it is.
Perhaps Youngblood was born tough, or perhaps he earned his toughness after losing his father at age 10. Raised on his grandfather's farm in the no-stoplight town of Monticello, Florida, Youngblood defied the odds to become a player coaches and teammates called the best defensive lineman they'd ever seen. Such sentiments made it all the more surprising when Youngblood endured 12 years of Hall of Fame hopes and 12 letdowns.
Your expectations build, and the anticipation builds. And then you come close, and you come close, and year after year goes by. You know, people say, are you nervous about it? Are you antsy or what? And you have to, you know, be honest, yeah. You know, to be nominated and to be included in the Hall of Fame is phenomenal.
With the long wait over, Youngblood can now reflect on the Hall of Fame career he never imagined possible.
I was taught to play the game. Every time you put your hand on the ground, you wanted to play that play as well as you possibly can. You didn't take any off, because that could be the play that would turn the game.
Well, it certainly takes greatness to know greatness, does it not? And our presenter sure had that. He helped pass the torch to Jack Youngblood, and what a torch it was. At defensive tackle for the Los Angeles Rams, he played in 14 straight Pro Bowls, which is the record. Hall of Famer Merlin Olsen.
Thank you. And thank you, Canton, for your incredible hospitality, for helping all of us up here today celebrate our football experience, which is such a magical part of our lives. Congratulations to this marvelous class of inductees. And Jack, I want you to know how proud I am to have been asked to introduce you today. When Jack Youngblood arrived in Los Angeles in 1971, first-round draft pick, All-American out of Florida, you had to love this kid. Handsome, personable, tremendous speed, great strength, and a huge grin on his face. I don't think I've ever met anyone who enjoyed playing football more than Jack Youngblood. There were some good things for Jack in Los Angeles as he arrived in that year. Certainly one of them was that we helped to add to his strong work ethic, something that would help him the rest of his career. He became part of the tradition of dominant line play, of the fearsome foursome. But maybe most importantly, he had the opportunity to learn from and work with maybe the best football pass rusher you'd ever see, Deacon Jones. But 1971 was not an easy year for Jack Youngblood. The transition to professional football was not as quick as Jack wanted it to be. He was struggling, quite frankly. He was learning lessons, some of them quite painful, like the day he was playing against a 320-pound tackle, Bob Brown, played for the Oakland Raiders, and Bob would put two huge pads on his forearm. Deacon Jones claimed they were old refrigerators, and he beat on Jack's chest until after the game, Jack looked like he'd been run over by a truck. Jack, you've got to stay away from those refrigerators. But maybe the low point that year came after a loss when, in front of the entire team, our head coach, Tommy Prothro, looked down at Jack and said, "Youngblood, you may be the worst football player I've ever seen." Jack Youngblood's football story could have ended right there. One of the reasons it didn't was because Jack believed in himself. While most of us were worried about Jack staying on the roster, Jack was telling his roommate, who happened to be my brother Phil, "Phil, how am I going to make the All-Pro team if I don't get more playing time?" In 1973, under a new head coach, Chuck Knox, and a new line coach, Ray Malavasi, Jack's career took off. He quickly established himself as one of the dominant defensive players in the league, a great all-around player. His strength was the pass rush. He just had this insatiable desire to wrap his arms around that quarterback's neck, and he did, again and again and again, becoming a giant pain in the neck to the offensive tackles that tried to play against him, and a genuine health hazard to the quarterbacks of the league. At the time of his retirement from football in 1984, available statistics placed Jack second all-time on the sack list, the only name ahead of his first teacher in Los Angeles, Deacon Jones. Greatness is certainly measured more than just in statistics and in honors, although Jack had piles and piles of those. It's measured in the impact a player has on those around him. When Jack was on the field, he raised the level of the performance of his teammates. He was a leader in the locker room as well as on the field in his performance. His leadership was unquestioned. And certainly there's no question that Jack was one of those unique players who could come up with a big play when it was needed. Jack's enthusiasm, his determination were contagious. And I know for a fact that those are part of what brings him here today. Jack's toughness, and you just saw tribute to that, is legend. And Jack didn't think it was a big deal to go out there and play with his leg wrapped up. He wanted to be a part of what was happening on that field, and the pain was something he could deal with. Well, I think Jack Youngblood's dreams have come full cycle. From the schoolyard playgrounds in Monticello, Florida, to a skinny 190-pound middle linebacker at Jefferson County High School who only had one scholarship offer, to an undersized defensive lineman at the University of Florida who built himself into an All-American, to Los Angeles, where he survived 2 very difficult years to become one of the finest defensive ends ever to play in the NFL. And interestingly, at each step along the way, there were those who were telling Jack Youngblood, you're not big enough, or you're not strong enough, or you're not good enough. Well, Jack, you're here today to have your name inscribed with the elite of pro football, the best of the best. And Youngblood, you may be the best damn football player I ever saw. Ladies and gentlemen, NFL Hall of Famer Jack Youngblood.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Merlin. Merlin remembers those stories better than I do sometimes. Ladies and gentlemen, inductees, my fellow classmates in the 2001 Hall of Famers that are here present with us today, I stand before you all a very truly humbled man. I don't know that I really have the words to describe what it means to receive the greatest accolade that a football player can have, to be inducted into Pro Football's Hall of Fame. But 2, I think, are appropriate and come to mind immediately. That's thank you. And I want to begin with thanking our Lord for graciously blessing me in ways far beyond I could have ever imagined. I've been blessed in life, in health, and especially in friendship. And for all of those who came to join me in this celebration, all my friends, thank you so much. In these few minutes, I want my family and
and my extended family, by what I call them, who've come here for this wonderful weekend, I want you all to please realize that each and every one of you have a very special piece of this piece of bronze right there. That is, you all are a part of that, and very important to me. To my wife, Barbara, and Bob, I love you guys from the bottom of my heart, and this is for you more than anybody else. We're missing 3 of my biggest fans here today. My father, my grandfather, and my mother. They loved their football, and they absolutely loved the fact that I was playing the game of football. They're not here, but I guarantee you they're smiling. The biggest smile anybody in heaven can possibly be smiling right now. They love their son playing football. And I forgot to add, Mother, no, they didn't hurt me. It just looked that way. I tried to hurt them most of the time. And to my grandmother, Moal, you know, you had to love me to make all those trips to Atlanta when we had the most people in the stands in our ball games in Georgia. Paula and Lynn, my 2 sisters, my built-in cheering squad, you guys sacrificed many weekends to follow me around the NFL. Thank you. My parents instilled in me a work ethic, a determination, values and morals to be the very, very best I could possibly be. And these lessons are probably more important than any individual honor that I was able to achieve and to be honored with over the course of my football career in high school and college and in the NFL. They come and go. Recognitions come and go. But those lessons that you learn of respect last much longer than any piece of hardware can ever. The interpersonal aspect of relationships through this game is what makes today so very special for me. I am so glad that Brent Hall, my high school football coach, is here in Canton with me today. I don't know where Brent is, but there he is. Coach, could you ever believe this? Huh? This is incredible. Thank you, Brent. There was a baseball coach at the University of Florida many years ago. He was scouting our territory, and he saw a young man playing football in 1966. And he saw something in a young man playing the game that nobody else noticed. Coach Dave Fuller, he's smiling right now. He's not with us anymore either. But I want to thank Coach Graves, Coach Ray Graves, who was my football coach at the University of Florida, for believing in a wise man, Coach Dave Fuller. He saw the potential in a football player, and they made me a Gator, not just for 4 years, but they made me a Gator for life. Now, as Merlin has already described, the supernatural part comes about. I'm drafted number 1. Hardy Sewell and Johnny Sanders, I don't know what in the world they were thinking about when they drafted me number 1 with the 20th pick. I had no possible clue that this was going to happen. When I finally realized where I'm drafted, I'm thinking to myself, okay, it's Merlin Olsen, Deacon Jones. That was the fearsome foursome. This is going to be a short trip. We're going to be back in Florida very shortly. This is not going to last. Thank goodness that thought and that feeling passed. Merlin, I want to say personally right now, it was a true honor and a pleasure to have you as my mentor, my teammate, coach me sometimes, and a friendship that has lasted and will last all of our lives. Thank you very much. I can say that because he made my life a lot easier in those early years when we were playing together. He had grabbed two, and that would make my job. I didn't have to deal with one. So I could just go and do my thing and go rush the passer. He made a young man's life a lot easier in those early days. And to Deacon Jones, let me say thank you to you. Where's Deacon? Right here. Deacon, thank you, brother. Thanks for sharing your passion for playing the game. He shared a little of the style too. He let me use the head slap. He didn't keep all of that to himself. To my benefit, Deacon left the Rams before his time. But before he had left, he had already set the standard for defensive ends in the National Football League. He's been my advocate for years. I want to say thank you, sir. I have to thank Chuck Knox, because in 1973, Carroll Rosenblum, who was the best owner any football player could have ever played for, he made Chuck Knox the head coach. Chuck called me into his dingy little office over the golf course in Long Beach. He sat me down. In his Pennsylvania tough man style, he said, "Son," he said, "Jack, the responsibility of left end is yours now. You've got big shoes to fill. There's a legacy that played that position, and I expect you to be my leader, to be the leader of my football team." I want to thank Chuck for beginning that process of allowing us the opportunity to play the game on some awfully good football teams over those years. We didn't win all the championships we wanted to. The Minnesota Vikings and the Cowboys in those years were just a little bit luckier. But I tell you, it never whatsoever diminished my thoughts and my feelings for the football teams that we played on, and for the man who led us. He was a great coach, Chuck Knox. Chuck left us, unfortunately, and Carroll Rosenblum made Ray Malavasi, our defensive coordinator, the head coach. Ray was not only my defensive coordinator, he was my personal coach, defensive line coach, and he was also a dear friend. Ray took an overachieving football team in 1979 all the way to Super Bowl 14. And I make the quip today, but there's a little truth to it. If we'd have stopped the game with 6 minutes left in the fourth quarter, we'd have beat those deadgum Steelers. And John Stallworth, bless your heart, he went and caught a football that day that nobody else in the National Football League could have caught except for the guy he's presenting. You guys already had 3 rings. You could have let us have 1. You could have shared a little bit. I mean, good gracious. I finished my career with a coach who was probably the most inspirational coach that I played for in those 14 years. John Robinson, You came to an organization that desperately needed some inspiration. You may be the best at putting your finger on the heartbeat of your football team as any coach that I've ever seen. Thank you for 2 good years. I'd have stayed around longer now if you'd have stayed in the 4-3. You know, I'd still be there maybe. I don't know. I just tried to match Jackie's record there at 20. Thank you for your inspiration, Coach. And now let me say thank you to our organization. Georgia, we will forever miss Carroll. He loved his football teams like we were his own sons. He had a genuine affection that made us feel as though we were his family. We'll always remember him coming to practice, and he used to bring his lunch and sit on the sidelines, and he was genuinely interested in what his football team was doing. Georgia, you have carried forward the vision and the passion that Carroll had for his football team. You won a championship with a great group of players in 1999. I want to thank you for continuing to be the owner, the boss, the #1 fan and friend of your football team, and for allowing me to hang around for all those years. We appreciate that, and thank you. John Shaw, you came into our family. I think we made you a football fan. It took several seasons, and I think that friendship grew out of the struggles that we went through each season and each game that we played. Thank you, sir. In closing, allow me to share with you just a few thoughts. As great as this game is, and as thrilling as it is for me to play, it's the people who make impressions on your life, who leave a mark, a footprint on your playing field. I've been truly blessed with special people all of my life, especially in this career. A few of those I need to mention and say thank you to. Marvin Demoff, you helped shape a young man's life and a young man's career. I thank you for that. My teammate, Rich Saul. Richie, you're one tough dude, man. You're the kind of a guy, you're the kind of a player that coaches want on their football teams. I just don't know how in the world we roomed together all that time. That's unbelievable. Phil Olson, when I came into your life, you had to add me to your brother list. You had several already there. We've traveled some roads together, and I appreciate our friendship. Thank you. Larry Brooks can't be here with us. He's at camp. Brooksy, you're going to miss all the fun. We're going to have a celebration this evening. It's going to be a wonderful time. Freddie, we had some great football teams, didn't we? We had some wonderful players. Freddie Dreyer, my compatriot on the other side. We had a pretty good thing going there, crisscrossing them there. Dennis Hara, you can always play on my football team. You're one heck of a football player, and you're one funny dude. You know that? And Johnny Oswald, I don't know where you are, where you're sitting, but you're the best. That's all I can say. You're the best. I'll wrap this up by expressing to you just a few thoughts about playing this game. I played this game with a passion. It was more like a love affair, an elusive love affair that It alternately intrigued me, it frustrated me, and it rewarded me. But it always kept me returning, giving me a momentary taste of satisfaction, but never enough. We didn't accomplish all that we set out to do. I didn't sack the quarterback every time I rushed the passer. I didn't make every tackle for a loss. I guess no one could. But it wasn't because I didn't have the passion to, the desire to. I hope that that showed when I played the game. It's an honor for me to be inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame, into this elite group of football players. I am truly honored to be on this team, and I have one final thank you. Again, thank you, Lord, for these blessings. Thank you.
Youngblood, now we know why his toughness is legendary, because he didn't know he was tough.
You know, Susie, if there is a reoccurring theme that we're hearing during this ceremony, it is about playing with passion. It's about overcoming odds. Here we have another front seven person who a little bit undersized, told that he couldn't make it and didn't believe any of that and did whatever he had to do to overcome the odds. And you hear these guys speak. I think if you're a younger player out there, you know, they can direct you down the path of greatness. You know, play the game with passion, do whatever it takes to prepare to be great, and then maybe, just maybe, you get a chance to end up here in Canton, Ohio. And that the game is all about relationships and how many people it takes to get someone to the Hall of Fame. And we go from one Ram to the next, the Iron Man. 259 games and 20 seasons, 7 Pro Bowls. Jackie Slater up next. Stay with us.
His first ever NFL draft pick. An excellent pass rusher.
Well, we've talked about how this class, the class of 2000, is characterized by that in-the-trenches play. It's the first time in the modern era that 3 offensive linemen are enshrined into the Hall of Fame in the same year. Mike Munchak, still hear from, a devastating run blocker. Ron Yeri, who just destroyed people. And, of course, up next, Jackie Slater, blocked for 7 different 1,000-yard rushers. Jackie enshrined into the Hall of Fame when we come back from camp.
Pro Football Hall of Fame.
He was here on this very stage in Canton, Ohio 2 years ago as a presenter for Eric Dickerson. And we predicted then it wouldn't be long for Jackie Slater. You know, I am in the prediction business every now and then. That was an easy one. But his hard work over 20 seasons with the Rams was not easy. Did it pay off? Well, you tell me. 7 different backs ran for 1,000 yards behind Jackie Slater. With more, here's Andrea Kramer.
Football, regardless of what any little cutie pie quarterback or wide receiver or any of those guys tell you, football is a big man's game. And I've believed all my career that a good big man is always better than a good little man.
And this big man was the rock for the Rams. He played 20 years with the same team, more than any other player in NFL history.
You wanted the longevity mark.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah, not a lot of things that an offensive lineman can hang his hat on. I mean, you know, you can say you played hard, and you can say you played hard for 3 years. You can say you played hard for 5, or maybe even 10, those of us that were lucky to do it. But to say you were in the thick of it for 20 years and playing hard, playing at a high level, was real important to me.
When he retired in 1995 at age 41, Slater had lined up in front of 24 different quarterbacks and 37 assorted running backs, including 7 1,000-yard rushers. But longevity alone did not make Slater a first-ballot Hall of Famer. He was considered a master technician.
Do you feel that there was some aspect of your game that people in the know would say, that's a Slater move, that's a Jackie Ray move?
I had a pass set that was, I think, was second to none, where I didn't really pick my feet up off the ground to move my mass around.
The minute it was going to be a pass block, you know, he would come out of that stance like this. I mean, come out of it. I mean, if the guy was coming to rush, you can believe me that the hands were going somewhere toward the chest and the face.
Considered the consummate professional, Slater was not one to tolerate a lack of respect for the game.
September 25th, 1983, at Shea Stadium to play the Jets. Mark Gastineau sacks Vince Ferragamo, and what happens?
That was one of those things. I'm not so proud of that particular moment in history.
I remember coming up to that week, John Robinson said that, you know, he was not going to have Gastineau doing that silly dance.
And sure enough, I mean, Jackie had a great game against the guy, but the guy got him once and sacked the quarterback.
I got beat. Simple as that. I got beat, and Mark Gastineau, a great football player, but he had the bad habit of rubbing it in people's faces after he had some success. And I just, for whatever reason, something snapped.
He goes over, you know, to do his dance, and Jackie runs over and pushes him. And at that point, all hell broke loose.
I mean, the next thing I know, we got a bench clearing brawl, and I'm saying to myself, come on, guys, I didn't mean that. Let's break this thing up.
But what feedback did you get from your peers?
I got letters from guys from around the league.
Saying what?
Offensive tackles and offensive linemen saying, hey, Jackie's about time, you know. 3 cheers to Jackie Slater. Guys want to buy me beers, and guys want to take me to dinner, all that kind of stuff.
How does Jackie Slater make it into the Hall of Fame in his first year of eligibility? What does that say about you?
I think it says more than anything else, Andrea. It says that I played the role that an offensive lineman should play, and I played it perfectly. My sole responsibility was to help, so I think that would be it. You know, I epitomize rank and file.
To present him here this afternoon, a man who knows darn well what a rock at tackle means to his football team. Now with UNLV, here's Jackie's longtime head coach with the Los Angeles Rams, John Robinson.
Thank you. It's great to be here among the greatest coaches and football players that ever lived. That's really an honor for all of us. And it's a particular privilege for me to have a chance to present Jackie Slater to all of you in the Hall of Fame. Jackie was drafted in the 3rd round in 1976. He played 20 years, as you have heard, for one organization, played 259 games, most of any offensive lineman. But those are all the stats that he has. He never sacked a quarterback, never threw a pass, never scored a touchdown. Hell, I doubt if he even touched the football in those 20 years. For Jackie played in the offensive line, the most team-oriented and underappreciated position in all of sport, the offensive line. Jackie had a career and devoted himself to blocking in the dirt so others could reach the stars. And as you've heard on the video, a lot of people, some great players, had that opportunity because of his effort. So it's great that Jackie takes his place along with the other offensive linemen here in the most elite position in sports, in my view, the offensive line. Jackie was born in Jackson, Mississippi, went to Wingfield High School, where he was an outstanding football player, basketball player, track man. Didn't have any stats in basketball or track either in high school. Went to Jackson State where he was an All-American blocking for Walter Payton. He then moved west, drafted in the 3rd round by the Rams, spent his first 3 years in an apprenticeship role, but then in 1979 was the starter and helped the Rams reach the Super Bowl. It was about then, after 3 or 4 years in the league, that Jackie decided to become a great football player. Becoming great for him was not going to be a sudden flash of brilliance or some unbelievable number of yards. It was down and dirty, play after play after play. His work habits were always good, but suddenly they seemed to become almost fanatical. When all the rest of us were going home, you could see Jackie out there working on that pass set. We used to say, guy's going around the bend a little bit here. He sought help from his friends, his offensive line, Dennis Harrah, Doug Smith, Irv Pankey, Kent Hill, and others. He sought help to improve. He was very fortunate to have Jack Youngblood as a mentor and an opponent on the practice field every single day of his early career. Later on in his career, Kevin Green came and learned how to rush the passer from Jackie. And Jackie just did awful things to Kevin Green in his early year, but both of them got better. Jackie had the opportunity to play with the great Eric Dickerson. And Jackie made those blocks, and boy, Eric went zoom right by him for 2,000 yards. It seemed like every year that he was there. He also had 2 offensive line coaches that made a big difference in his life. Dan Radakovich was his early offensive line coach, and I know Jackie thinks highly of him. But a most important man in Jackie's career was Hudson Houck, who was his offensive line coach for 9 years. Hudson would be here, except he's the offensive line coach for the Dallas Cowboys, and I believe they're playing tonight. Hudson and Jackie would often be there after everybody else was gone, as I said, and in the off season. The 2 of them were partners to become great, and they certainly did. Jackie's most dramatic performance came in a playoff game against Philadelphia and the great Reggie White. Reggie was at the very top of his career, and no one could block him. And we were headed into that game, and it was Jackie and Reggie. In that game, Jackie, I don't think he slept all week, worked and got Hudson out there, got his teammates to help him. And when that game started, it was one of the most dramatic confrontations that any of us have ever seen. Pat Summerall and John Madden did a fabulous job of showing replays and showing this combat that most of us miss when we go to a football game. But here it was, 2 of the all-time greats at each other. Jackie did everything. He tripped him, he held him, he fooled him, he faked him, he did anything he could, and he blocked him. And he had one of his great nights. That Sunday night, everybody in the country knew who Jackie Slater was. On behalf of his family, on behalf of his teammates, the Ram organization, and offensive linemen everywhere, I proudly present Jackie Slater.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. This is beautiful. This is beautiful. I love it. You know, before I start talking here, I have to talk to all of the Hall of Famers here that have been here for a long time. They have these bets that, you know, they want to know which guy's going to break down first and start crying and going on. And I want you to know that if you notice some moisture in the corner of my eyes, it is only my allergies. And I guarantee you, you can rest assured that it's only allergies until you see my shoulders going like that. So trust me on that. Thank you so much, John Robinson. You know I love you. Great coach. And you know, when I chose John Robinson to present me here today, it was kind of easy. Hudson Houck I worked with. I love Hudson Houck. But, you know, John Robinson I worked with for 9 years. And on 8 of those 9 years, this guy handpicked his captains. And every year, 3 of his captains for the year were offensive linemen, 3 of his starting offensive linemen. Now that tells me that a guy knows which side his bread is buttered on. And John, I love you for it. Appreciate it. You know, January 7th, 1990, Michael Martinez wrote in the New York Times, "There is no glamour down there. It is dirt and grass stains, grunting and grabbing, a sea of arms and feet and numbers, a pile of bodies. It is everything about football and yet nothing. From autumn till winter, the game is played on the line, a place where the strong and the strong-willed survive, but where careers are seemingly lost in a blink. You know, functioning in an environment of organized chaos was a way of life for me for 20 years, and I wouldn't have had it any other way. I loved it. That's right. You know, I really should be very relaxed as I stand here before you today, because a couple of years ago, Eric Dickerson, my good friend, had me to present him here in the Hall of Fame, but, you know, I did get somewhat familiar, as I said, but now that it's me, you know, my allergies are flaring up. As I stand here before you people and in front of this absolutely awesome group of guys right here, absolutely awesome group of guys, this is one of the best experiences of my life. You see, these guys here represent the very best that the game of pro football has ever known. And now they're counting me in their number. This is special day for me. You know, this past year, the voters got together and they looked at the body of my work, which covers a 20-year span of time. And I can just hear them, you know, they decided in January, but I can just hear them in the meeting, you know, when they said, you know, this guy Slater, well, hell, he never threw a football. He never caught a football, never ran with one, and he never even sacked a quarterback. But all they said, Jackie Slater belongs in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. And for that they were watching with all the stars that I played with, I am truly grateful. I'm truly grateful. You see, there's not a lot of stats that an offensive lineman, as Coach Robinson said, can accumulate. We are the rank and files guys of pro football. We're support players. And I like to think that we're the ultimate team players. Our jobs is only that we do the best job we can of helping out. And I thought about my induction into the Pro Football Hall of Fame and what it really means to me, and I concluded that more than anything else, this is a time of confirmation. It's a confirmation that Henry Cotton and Willie Anderson and Coach Dobson at Blackburn Junior High School were right when they went to a 6 feet, 245-pound, 13-year-old and said, hey, Jackie, maybe you ought to try football instead of just hanging out with your buddies and talking about wanting to play the guitar. They were right to encourage me. It's a confirmation that Tommy Williams at Jim Hill High School, an all-black school, and then Glenn Slay at Wingfield High School, during a time when integration was being forced in the state of Mississippi, 2 different occasions, these 2 men were right to take me aside and say, hey, Jackie, you can't get caught up in all the racial tensions that's gripping this area right now. You got a lot of ability. You got to look beyond that, and you got to use that ability and push on toward what could be a great future. These men were right to do that, and I thank them during a time when I really needed to hear it. It's also a confirmation that Bob Hill, the head coach at Jackson State University, and Melvin Pete, the offensive line coach at Jackson State, were right when they took me, a pass rushing demon, a run stopper extraordinaire, and they moved my big butt on the offensive side of the ball to block for a guy named Walter Payton. They were right when they did that. And I really do thank them for doing it. Didn't like it at the time, but I thank them for doing it. You know, this is also, you know, the theme of the Hall of Fame this year is about dreaming. Today is also a confirmation that if you have a dream, you should let no proper noun, and let me say that again. You should let no person, place, or thing discourage you from trying to accomplish your dreams. You see, in 1976, I want to share with you that I left Jackson State University and I went to Skokie, Illinois to play in what then was the College All-Star game, the last one they had, and I was a small school boy, and when I got there, I found out that I was third string left tackle and third string left guard, and all the way across the line of scrimmage, I was third string. But I was number one stepping fetcher. Slater, we need some papers. Can you run down there and get those papers? We're out of pencils. Slater, can you go get some pencils for the guys? We need them. Out on the football field, Slater, we need the bags. Can you drag them up here so we can do some drills and hit these bags? And, you know, I made up my mind at that time that I would always do the things that would give me a chance to be a great football player and not a stepping fetcher in the National Football League. Oh, yeah. You know, not only does my confirmation, not only does this induction, rather, bring a time of confirmation to my mind, it is also a time to give thanks. And obviously, I want to thank my parents and my in-laws, great in-laws, my coaches, John Robinson and his great staff whom I worked with for 9 years. I want to thank all those guys that I worked with for over 29 years, from the 8th grade to my 20th year with the Rams. And also, as Jack Youngblood said earlier, a big thanks to Chuck Knox, and then the late Carol Rosenblum, a great owner, and his lovely wife, Georgia Frontier, who had added a latest touch to owning a football team, and the entire Ram organization for drafting me and supporting me and giving me an opportunity to play the game that I love for over 20 years. And then to two great line coaches, Dan Radakovich and especially Hudson Houck, the best line coaches that a guy could have. Hudson Houck kept me on the cutting edge technically for 9 years and enabled me to continue playing at a high level when many people my age were calling it quits. Then to some special friends, Tony Wiley, the president of the Houston Texans, good friend of mine, then Rick Smith, Bob Oates, Bernie Miklasz. Big thank you to you guys. You know what you mean to me. You know how I appreciate you. And you know, guys, I was also fortunate to have had an opportunity to play with seven men who are in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Walter Payton, I played with in college. Joe Namath, I played with at the Rams. Merlin Olsen here. Eric Dickerson, Tom Mack. Ron Yeri was a teammate of mine his last year. And then my beloved Jack Youngblood, a man who whipped my rear end for 3 years and taught me what it's about, being a pro football player. I love you, Jack, and I appreciate you. And then also 3 very special men that I sweated with at the Rams for over 10 years. Dennis Harrah, who I played with for 13 years, a guy who was Dodge City tough every day of the week. And then, of course, Doug Smith, a man that I played with the longest 14 years at the Rams from Bowling Green. Doug Smith was a man who always encouraged us to do the best we could and always pointed us in the direction of Jesus Christ, and I really appreciate Doug Smith. And then Irv Pankey, who I played with for 10 years from Penn State, a guy who brought it every day, a guy who made me turn my game up, you see, because I wanted to be the best tackle on the team. If I hadn't done it, he would have made a hell of a lot more money. And then I want to give a big thanks out to John Shaw over here, the president of the St. Louis Rams. He's a friend and has been a boss for over the last 17 years. He's a guy who almost always won at the negotiating table, but he was a guy who said to me and said to everyone, he said the Rams are always a better team because of Jackie Slater. And John, I love you, and you know I appreciate all that you've done for me. And then a very special thanks to my 2 sons right here, Matthew Slater and David. You know those allergies, boy. Woo. Matthew and David Slater, 2 kids, great kids, 2 kids that kept me young at heart at the end of my career when my body was telling me, allergies, quarterback. These allergies are something in this part of the country. We don't have this problem in Southern California. And then my wife, Annie, who I've been married to. No shoulders. Whom I've been married to for 25 years. She's been my encourager. the country. She's been my encourager, and she knows I love her, and none of this would be possible without her. When I think of all the people that's been a big part of what I do and what I've done, there's too many to call out all the names. But I hope that all of you know how much I appreciate you and how much I love you for what you've done to encourage me along the way. And then a big thank you to all the fans around the country, all of you here for being supportive, especially in Los Angeles and St. Louis, some of the best football playing fans in the world. Always made Jackie Slater feel like he was their guy. And we had a chance as long as Jackie was out there. And in closing, I must tell you that I'm often asked, how is it, Jackie, that you were able to survive in the National Football League for 20 years, a vicious and violent game? And you know what? It never ceases to amaze me when I give them my heartfelt answer. And that is simply that I believe it was ordained by God himself for my life. You see, people want to hear me say that I worked hard. They want to hear me say I had great coaches and I had great teammates and that covered me and they took care of me, and that I had a great system like John Robinson's excellent rushing attack that featured my talents with great backs like Eric Dickerson. And you know, the truth of the matter is, all of that is true. It's true. But you see, I know that God provided it all. The good health, the teammates, and even the driving desire to be the best. I'm thankful to my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. And in closing, I'd like to simply say, these are the words that I pretty much live by for 20 years. A wise man said, there's nothing better under the sun for man to do than to eat, to drink, and to tell himself that his work is good. I like to think that my work was good, and I'd like to thank you for telling me that. Thank you.
Tommy, let's just touch on the significance and put in perspective not only 20 years with the same team.
Well, Susie, I'm reminded of a former teammate of mine, Claudie Miner, who played offensive tackle, and he retired very early in his career. And when I asked him, I said, well, why are you leaving the game? He said, you as a linebacker don't know what it's like to be hit in the face on every single play. So when you see Jackie Slater and you hear how joyous he is to play the position, I think it's a testament to his toughness. And then the 20 years that he played at the position for one team, I don't think we will ever see again.
And it's also nice to know that the selection committee can see through the stars and knows that the game is played on the line, and just how valuable these guys here. It's a rare time of the year when we really get to say that.
Well, the one thing that we know is not going to change is that offensive linemen will only be recognized when they hold, other than being inducted into the Hall of Fame. So this is a great moment for Jackie Slater.
As we continue, we'll keep it on the line. Move over to guard Mike Munchak, the devastating run blocker for the Houston Oilers. Years ago, they nicknamed him Canton. Well, he's here now. ESPN's NFL team kicks off preseason coverage next Saturday in San Antonio. It's the Saints and the Vikings, 8 p.m. Eastern Time on ESPN. And up next, 9 Pro Bowls, 9 knee surgeries. Mike Munchak, he's from Scranton, a record of 357 guests ready to cheer. And welcome back to Canton, Ohio. 2 more to go as the enshrinement ceremonies continue for the class of 2001. So far, an emotional day, and we've heard many of not only football lessons, but many life's lessons as well. Poignant words from Nick Bonacani, Marv Levy, Jackie Slater, Jack Youngblood. And we turn things back over to our Master of Ceremonies, Chris Berman.
There's such a contingent of fans from his hometown of Scranton, Pennsylvania here today. By the way, who's minding the store at home? Okay. And now we've figured out how they all got here. Mike Munchak sprung a block so that all of you could get here safely. He's that good. Just as he did for 12 seasons with the Houston Oilers. Love you, Blue. More from Sean Salisbury.
From the depths of a nightmarish 1-8 strike-shortened season in 1982, one of the lowest points in franchise history, a legendary Oiler was born.
If anything, he reminded me of kind of a great white shark. He had a sense of just kind of being calm and quiet, but he had a very imposing look about him, just physically, the way that he was built, you know, his big old guns sticking out.
Bruce Matthews, who arrived in Houston the following season, forged a tight relationship with Munchak. As the team continued to struggle, winning only 15 games in the next 4 seasons, the bond strengthened, and in fact spread to the rest of the line as a whole.
Even though we weren't winning, we became a group that stayed together for a long time. We had a heck of a lot of fun, win or lose, because we know how hard we played, and we had a lot of fun in those games, and the camaraderie off the field was just unbelievable.
There really was a sense of pride, and Munch was the leader of that group. You know, everyone looked to him to see the standard of excellence that he set.
In 1987, the excellence finally started translating into wins. The Oilers put together a 9-5 season, earning their first playoff berth in 7 years. Houston then hosted a wild card game with the Seahawks.
They played a 3-4 defense, and Munch and I were the 2 guards, and you know, we just tried to kill them, and we got some good shots on them. But Mike really had a good game. In fact, I think he tore Bosworth's jersey on him, and he came back out with a new jersey, and he started working on that one.
And just walking off that field after we beat them in the overtime game and saying, man, we finally arrived. It was just a great feeling to kind of finally feel what that playoff feeling was all about.
The Oilers would reach the playoffs 7 consecutive seasons, 3 times under Jerry Glanville, and 4 with Jack Party's run-and-shoot offense, which presented an altogether new challenge for Munchak.
We had to start looking for things we never looked for before. We had to look for safeties, where if the safety was in the middle of the field, if there was too deep, can they come off the slot? How do we protect the quarterback?
They're in a harder offense that I can think of to block as an offensive lineman. You know, it was something that Munch and I talked about. You know, I'd love to see someone else in the league try and block this thing and do it as well as we did.
It's likely no one ever did. For 2 vastly different offenses, for 7 straight playoff appearances, for 9 Pro Bowls in a 10-year span, and for many things more than the mere numbers, Mike Munchak joins the class of 2001.
Is there any way that you'd like players to describe you?
I hope they'd say, hey, you know what, that Munchak, he played hard, and he played it by the rules, and he gave it everything he had every play. If I was injured, had a nick, it was just still going to be the same level of play. Somehow I was going to find a way to try to get it done to help us win a game.
To present Scranton's own Mike Munchak, a man who has worked side by side, day by day, and knows more than anyone about his play. I would say that he would be up here soon, except he may never retire. It just may never happen. 13 straight years a Pro Bowler as an Oiler and now as a Tennessee Titan, the first current player to ever be a Hall of Fame presenter, which means in his 19th NFL season, he's learned a very valuable new trick of how to get a break from training camp. Ladies and gentlemen, Bruce Matthews.
Thank you. The Saturday before the Super Bowl this year, I was down in Orlando, Florida, with my 3 oldest children, Stephen, Kevin, and Marilyn, and I was accepting an award from the NFL alumni. That Saturday morning, we went out to breakfast at the IHOP, and I was scanning the sports page, and a sudden feeling of panic came over my body as I realized that the 2001 Hall of Fame class would be announced later that day. And what it was all about was whether my former teammate, my current line coach with the Tennessee Titans, and my friend Mike Munchak would make it. Fortunately, we had a day planned at Universal Studios, and needless to say, I forgot all about it. I got back to the hotel. I called my wife, Carrie, to see what was happening, and she asked me excitedly if I'd heard about Mike, and I said no. And she said that he had made it. And I go, made what? And then she told me the Hall of Fame. Needless to say, I called Mike up. We were very excited for him. And the highlight of the day was how Mike telling me about the chaos of how he learned about it and all the wild stuff that happened up in Nashville afterwards. And also the fact that I'm up here instead of down in Nashville scrimmaging against the Indiana Colts, hitting a bad perk of being an announcer either. I met Mike in 1983 at training camp in San Angelo, Texas, when the Houston Oilers had drafted me. My first impressions of Munch was that he was quiet, and more importantly, he could lay out a lot of pain on the football field. The guy was impressive in his uniform, to say the least. He had these big old guns, and it looked like the good Lord just slapped flesh on his shoulders and triceps where it wasn't on other people. I think the fortunate thing that for me as a player was that I had the type of player that I wanted to be like, playing on the same line as me. When we watched film, I would first watch to see how I did on the play, and then I would watch Mike to see the way that it was supposed to be done. Playing alongside Mike and following his example is a huge part of what has made me the player that I am. He set a standard of excellence that myself and every offensive lineman who played with him has tried to emulate. The hits that he put on linebackers were legendary, and they were frequently the topics of many mealtime conversations with the Oilers. One play that comes to mind was a shot that he put on a Browns defender, whom I hold in high regard because of my brother Clay, but on a screen pass in 1992. Mike ran out in the flat, and the defender, he saw him coming for about 5 yards. Mike hit him. The guy gyrated through the air 5 yards back, and it was one of the most awesome hits that I had ever seen. And our free-spirited punter, Greg Montgomery, later commented that it looked like a cat getting hit by a pickup truck. Probably the greatest thing I respect about Mike, other than the level that he played, was his ability to overcome pain and still play at an all-pro level. Later in his career, Mike had come out of some games and not practiced because of his ailing knees, but to be honest, you never would have known it from watching the game films. It wasn't until he retired after the '93 season that it occurred to me just how bad it was. And to be honest, I thought he had 2 or 3 more years from watching the film, but obviously the man was in pain, and I have a great deal of respect for him and all that he overcame. After Mike retired, he stayed on as a coach and offensive line coach, my coach. And we've never had a problem balancing our friendship and the player-coach relationship. I believe that I'm one of the very few players, if ever, who has shared the kind of relationship that I have with Mike right now, and it's something that has kept me on playing and helped me to be the player that I am. Mike believes that there are a few basic fundamentals that if you can master as an offensive lineman, you can be successful on every play, and he hammers them into us daily, almost too often, as a matter of fact. But I sometimes have to chuckle, though, when the rookies come in and they're yes sirring and no sirring Coach Munchak, and they're shaking in his boots at his every beck and call. And, well, I shake my head, but Munch doesn't scream much. He doesn't raise his voice much, but when he speaks, there's an authority in it, because we recognize that there isn't anyone who has ever done it better than him, so we better darn well listen to what he's saying. I must admit, though, that there are times during games when things aren't going so well for the vaunted Titan offense that Mike will give us one of those get-fired-up speeches, and I roll my eyes and shake my head, and I look at what he's become, and and then later we'll look at each other, and I'll call him out on that point and say, what the heck are we still doing out here? My relationship to Mike isn't limited just to me and him, but it goes far beyond that. Mike's parents, Paula and Mooney, and his 5 sisters are a huge part of his makeup as well. One of the highlights of my career has been the bus trips that Mooney would meticulously organize, and getting to know the family and spending time with them over the years. Even more has been the relationship between my family and Mike's wife, Marcy, and daughters, Alex and Julie. They're like family to us, and I cherish the many birthdays, holidays, and football games that we've shared and look forward to many more in the future. My words are insufficient to express to them how much they mean to my family and me and how much we love them. And I congratulate all of the Munchak family on the huge part of Mike being recognized here today. Finally, when someone says Hall of Fame to me, and I realize that in the history of the league, there are only 211 members, I'm awed by the fact of the thousands and thousands of men who have attempted to play this game. Words like excellence, integrity, and honor come to mind. Mike Munchak epitomizes that to me both on the field and off. And I don't think that there could be a better person to represent these values than him, not only as a player, but as a husband, a father, and especially as a friend. Being asked to present Mike in the Pro Football Hall of Fame is without a doubt the greatest athletic honor that I have ever received in my life. So to close, I would like for you to join me in welcoming my former teammate, my current line coach, and my best friend, Mike Munchak, as an inductee into the 2001 Pro Football Hall of Fame.
Yeah. All right, here we go. Yeah, I've been sitting up here the past hour, nervous as heck. I guess I've been envisioning that any moment someone from NFL security is going to show up and say, "Hey, Munchak, what are you doing up here? Get off that stage. This is for the Hall of Famers. You're just some blue-collar guy from Scranton, Pennsylvania." I say this because that was my initial thought when I was told of my election. How could I be part of this elite group right here? Heck, I was thrilled when I was a kid just to have their football cards. We'd even fight over them in the neighborhood, flip over them, just try to fight for them. And now to be part of this legendary group, you have to be kidding me. Well, since no one's here to throw me out, I guess I can go ahead and continue with my speech. I think I'm okay. First and foremost, I want to thank God for blessing me and allowing me to stand here today to receive this great honor. Wow, it's been an unbelievable experience these past 6 months. From the moment I received the news of the Hall of Fame election, there's been a whirlwind of congratulatory calls from friends and family, the media attention, and making plans for this wonderful weekend in Canton. I thank the city of Canton for its warmth and hospitality these past few days, and specifically the Hall of Fame committee, especially Tammy Owens, for all her hard work in getting the large Munchak group here, and I think it looks like we've all made it. So thank you, Tammy. Thanks also to the Hall of Fame Selection Committee, and especially John McClain of the Houston Chronicle, for his convincing presentation in January that helped me get here today. John, thanks also for all the kind words over the years with the Oilers. Thank you. Next, I'd like to congratulate my fellow inductees in the Hall of Fame class of 2001, Jack, Lynn, Nick, and Ron. I don't want to age you guys, but I watched you as I grew up. Jackie, I also watched you as I grew up. I continue to watch you while I played, and I still watch you when I retired. 20 years, man, that's unbelievable. And Marv, as head coach of Buffalo, unfortunately you beat us in a lot of memorable games on your way to the Super Bowl. I would have loved playing for you. It's truly an honor to be with all of you today. I have always loved pro football. From as far back as I can remember, I spent Sundays watching the NFL on TV with my dad. My favorite part was watching that 60-minute highlight show of the past week's action narrated by John Vicinda. His famous voice describing the hard-hitting action, the slow-motion replays, and that great NFL music that went perfectly with the game action gave me the chills. In fact, it still does. As I watched some of the highlights last night, you still get that same feeling inside. It made me feel like I was 10 years old all over again. It made me wish someday that I could be one of those great warriors. After the games, we'd go outside with my friends and we'd pretend to be those guys. We'd pretend to be Bart Starr throwing a touchdown pass, or Lynn Swann making the acrobatic catch, or Jack Youngblood. I knew that'd get some cheers. Or Jack Youngblood sacking the quarterback, and Nick Bonacani leading the no-name defense. You know, it's funny, Jackie and Ron, I never pretended to be an offensive lineman. Yeah, I guess now I really know who the important guys truly are. I stand here alone to receive this recognition, but there are so many people who have influenced me along the way
and I want to take this time now to thank them and let them know how much I appreciate it. Going all the way back to Pop Warner League days, my interest in football was fostered by a group of neighborhood dads, including my own, who formed and coached our team, the Scranton Apollos. Mr. Chapman, Mr. Gaver, Mr. McCarthy, Mr. Donachet, and my dad taught me the fundamentals of the game, and they made it fun. In high school at Scranton Central, I was a fullback and a linebacker. Hard to believe, I know. Head coach Modi Canis and his staff, especially assistant coach Ed Chase, were instrumental in my further development as a football player and a college prospect. They were a positive influence on a young teenage boy and helped to keep me in line, which I needed at times, I guess. Then on to Penn State, I had the opportunity to play for the great Joe Paterno. Joe was determined to find my niche, and he moved me from tight end. He said I wasn't quick enough. I was there one day. To defensive tackle, I was a little too slow to play there. He moved me out 3 days later. To offensive tackle, I was a little short for him. To center, I'm not quite sure why he moved me out of there. And then finally to offensive guard. So I thank Joe again for finally finding me a home. After I was moved to the offensive line, I was coached by Dick Anderson. And since I never played on the line before, he sure had his work cut out for him. I would like to thank Dick for teaching me the rest of the techniques that have guided me through the rest of my career. You know, going against Bruce Clark and Matt Millen didn't hurt either in practice. Those guys had a lot to do with helping me. And to my ex-teammates, especially Chet, Rick, Leo, Scotty, what an experience. I wouldn't have made it without you guys. Thanks for your friendship over the years. In 1982, I was drafted by the Houston Oilers. I am truly grateful to owner Bud Adams and general managers Lad Herzik and Mike Kolvac for drafting me into their fine organization and for the opportunity to block for Earl Campbell, a lineman's dream. Thank you, Mr. Adams and the entire Oiler organization for the privilege of working for you for the past 20 years as a player and a coach. I would also like to recognize the Houston Oilers fans, love you blue, all right, for their support throughout the years. You truly made the Dome a house of pain for visiting teams. It was an honor to play for three very talented offensive line coaches while I was at Houston. Bill Walsh in the early years, Kim Helton in the middle, and then the late Bob Young finished up my last 4 years. Each with their own unique styles, they taught me how to prepare mentally and physically for life in the trenches. Their guidance is what allowed me to become the player that I was. I've incorporated their techniques and philosophies into my coaching today. I've had two very special and crazy strength coaches. Dan Riley at Penn State, who through his weight training helped me to gain over 30 pounds in less than 2 years, which allowed me to compete on the offensive line. And to Steve Watterson with the Oilers, who for 8 years not only helped me increase my strength and size, see, there you go, Steve, it's still there, all right, but also he's helped me on my knee, rehab on my knees, which allowed me to get ready to play every Sunday. I want to thank both of you guys, and again, Steve, for the special relationship. Thank you very much. The thing I miss most about playing in the NFL is the camaraderie with my teammates. The offensive line is generally a tight-knit group, and ours was no exception. Our weekly Thursday night get-togethers and frequent practical jokes in the locker room allowed us to bond in a way that carried over to our success on the field. What a great group of guys. I miss playing with them all, especially Bruce Matthews and Dean Steinkuhler. The three of us played together for a long, long time. We shared so many unforgettable memories. I thank them for that. I put a great deal of thought into who would be my presenter today. There have been so many people who have influenced my career over the past 18 years, but my relationship with Bruce Matthews made an easy choice. We played together with the Houston Oilers for 11 years. From the first time I saw him play, I knew that we had a lot in common. We were both old school. Good old smash-mouth football. We respected the game and how the game was supposed to be played. Bruce and I had a similar work ethic and a mutual respect. We pushed each other to the next level. We were never satisfied. I credit Bruce for making me a better player. Through football, we became great friends. He is someone that I could always talk to anything about. Our families, our faith, football, our joint business ventures, life in general. Our families have become close. Our kids grew up together. Bruce is like a brother to me. I love this guy. Thanks for sacrificing, Bruce, those 5 days of training camp to come here to present me. almost 400 strong, have joined me here in Canton this weekend. Many of my relatives have made the trip. Special thanks to my Uncle AJ, my godfather, for all his support throughout my career. Many of my friends have also traveled a long way. Unfortunately, I can't mention them all, but specifically I'd like to mention my high school friends, Robbie, John, Joe, Cliff, Tom, and Mike. Thanks for your friendship throughout those years. I need to especially thank now my hometown of Scranton, Pennsylvania, for all the support they have shown me throughout my career. For 12 years, they have piled on buses to go to away games all over the East Coast, and even flew to Houston when I retired. I think that kind of following is unheard of, especially for an offensive lineman. It is greatly appreciated. Thank you all. I know that I would not be the man that I am today without my parents. Their unconditional love for each other and for me and my sisters, and their commitment to their 44-year marriage taught me how to be a good husband and father. I have never taken for granted the sacrifices that they made for me. They taught me integrity and to do the right thing. They never pushed me to be what they wanted, only encouraged me to make my own decisions. I thank God every day for blessing me with the two of you. I am very thankful for the special relationship that I have with my 5 sisters. Sue, Sharon, Jill, Melissa, and Tracy. I cherish our closeness and the times that we spent together. And thanks for spoiling me all these years. I love you guys. Yep. Football has been a big part of my life. But the most important part, without doubt, is the relationship with my wife, Marcy, and my daughters, Alex and Julie. They are the loves of my life. Alex and Julie, words can't express how much happiness you bring to my life. I am so proud to have you two as my daughters, and I'm really enjoying watching you grow up. Thanks for being here with us. And Marcy, you should be standing up here with me today because this would not have been possible without you. For 20 years, you helped me survive the pressures of the NFL, to win and perform by being supportive and understanding. You played nurse and psychiatrist as you helped me deal with and get through the injuries and surgeries that came with playing in the NFL. I know it was not easy. Thanks for being my partner, my best friend, and for being such a great wife and mother. You are the best. I love you, honey. In closing, I'd like to thank all the NFL players that came before me, especially the Hall of Famers who are here this morning, for your contributions to making this league as dynamic as it is today. Without your efforts, I never would have had the opportunity to live out my boyhood dreams. To be standing on the steps of the NFL Hall of Fame, the home of the greatest men to ever play the game, is proof that dreams do come true. I am humbled to be a member of this team. Thank you.
A lot of times you hear you don't necessarily have to be friends to be teammates, but especially across the offensive line, chemistry means everything.
Yeah, 2 very special players, Bruce Matthews as the presenter, Mike Munchak, the guy being inducted. And you just sense that, you know, the special relationship that guys have sometimes is just as important as the football that they play. And what a great player. Mike Munchak, 9 Pro Bowls in 12 seasons, you know, all that he had to go through to stay on the football field. And I think now we've seen all 3 linemen be inducted. And that, to me, is what really made this class so special and so unique.
And as you referred to, little kids may not dream of playing on the offensive line. Who knows? Maybe that changes a little bit today. Still to come, the performing artist. His stage of football field, Lynn Swann, spectacular. His speech is on the way. Stay with us. A duo you will see here in just a few moments. One of the greatest receiving tandems of all time, Lynn Swann and John Stallworth, helped the Steelers to win 4 Super Bowls. The Steelers fans out in force here in Canton today as they await the MVP of Super Bowl 10, Lynn Swann, about to be inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. John Stallworth, Lynn Swann, up next.
Says NFL.com for official fantasy football. Get exclusive features and real-time scoring free at NFL.com.
Well, did we forget someone? Well, maybe we did for a few years, but he has never, ever been forgotten in Pittsburgh, that's for sure. And we sure aren't forgetting Lynn Swann today either, are we? Style, substance, topped only by class. Here's Sal Palantonio.
First, you have to get the right name to be graceful, okay? You have to be born a swan.
I tend to believe that it was just his nature to do things with a in a very graceful way. The name Swan seemed to be apropos in that regard.
Lynn Swann played football with a natural grace and ease. As a young boy, he took a lot of ribbing for taking ballet, but it paid off.
I think taking dance starting in the 4th grade ingrained a sense of timing, a style, balance, a sense of rhythm in many things that I've done. I can look at football film, and there's some moves I've made that look like dance moves.
I think we saw the results of it, so we saw that in games, in big games, where he jumped up and came down with the football.
Swann finished with 336 catches and 51 touchdowns, not overwhelming career numbers. But his signature was the big catch in the big game, like in Super Bowl 10. Swann had 4 receptions for 161 yards, including a 64-yard touchdown. But 2 of the biggest catches in that game, indeed in his career, did not go for 6 points.
The catch that Swanee made in Super Bowl 10, the juggling catch, falling down and rolling and coming up with the football, one of the greatest catches I've ever seen.
Talk about the juggling 53-yard catch over Mark Washington.
A mistake.
It was a mistake.
It was a mistake. If I caught it when I was supposed to, if I caught it the first time, it'd just be another catch that I jumped up in the air and caught.
He fires for the bomb, and Lynn Swann going for it. Swann pulls it in. Swann beat his man on a bomb.
But people think of that as the most graceful, acrobatic play that you've ever made, and yet you're calling it a mistake.
Well, sometimes a great performance is because of a mistake. Because you have to do something extra to complete it and to make it happen. I think. And, to this day, maybe even a better catch might have been the first catch in that same Super Bowl along the sideline.
And back goes Bradshaw to fire to the near side, and it may be intercepted.
I went up in the air. I took a stutter step, allowed Washington to get about a half step in front of me, went up over his back, caught the ball.
Leaping for it was Lynn Swann, and they ruled a good catch at the Dallas 16-yard line.
Clearly, his body seemed to be out of bounds, and he maneuvered while in the air to come down inbounds. When you look at the replay of that catch, you really realize what went into it.
As Swann beat the defensive back Mark Washington on a great play.
I make the catch, arc my body, come back inbounds, both feet inbounds. I know that was probably the most important catch of my career to that date.
Does that define Lynn Swann?
I think that catch is, a lot of what I was on the football field, in terms of an ability to make a catch, critical situation, to make something happen that people didn't expect to happen, to perform in a pressure situation.
To present Lynn Swann, his running mate at wide receiver with the Steelers for all those great years. His time, too, will come as well. If you got Lynn Swann, you got to have John Stallworth.
like three rivers in here. Thank you. For the first 9 years of my career, I competed against some of the toughest defensive backs in the NFL. But my biggest competition, my biggest competitor wore the same colors I did. I competed against one of the greatest wide receivers to ever play the game. Our individual competitiveness built a barrier between us, and I thank God that he's given me the time and Lynn the time to break down that wall, to break down that barrier. It is a signal honor for me to be here today to present someone that I have the privilege of calling my friend, Lynn Swann. Desire, character, cohesiveness are the ingredients that go into making a great athlete and truly a good person. Do you have the desire to be great and the willingness to work toward that? Do you have the foundation of good character that allows you to overcome the obstacles in life rather than crumble under the stress? Can you achieve the cohesiveness necessary to be a team player? During Lynn's life, during his career, he has answered that with a resounding yes. He's answered every doubt that there's ever been about him with a resounding yes, but there's never been a doubt about his talent. Chuck Knowles said he was the perfect developed football player the moment he stepped on the practice field. Those of us that have been fortunate enough to see him play will all remember our favorite Swann catch. He's dazzled us in Super Bowls with catches while rolling and falling down. We've marveled at his mid-air maneuvers. He seems to get to those high ones a lot quicker than the defensive backs that were guarding him. You know, I'd like to believe it was because where they might have had thoughts about putting himself in jeopardy of injury, Lynn never had those thoughts. Lynn's been blessed with impeccable timing. A lot has been written about those dance lessons, and you heard a little bit about that. I'd like to know what he really told the guys on the playground, though, when they asked him what he's been doing for the last couple of hours. Did he really tell them he's been to dance lessons? You know, but it was California, so it may be a little bit different. You know, taking lessons seemed to be a part of a master plan. Taking dance lessons seemed to be a part of a master plan. And Lynn seems to always know where he wanted his career to go. When a lot of players were just happy to be in the NFL, he's always had a strategic plan. By his own admission, he always has great ideas. He'll be a great guy to start a business with because of that. He'll give you 3 to 5 minutes on why the idea is great prior to giving you the idea. You know, whereas not all the ideas will be great, but what he lacks in quality, he more than make up for in quantity. Joe Green said that when the game was on the line, Lynn always stepped forward and he made it look easy, and he did. But the steps were not always easy, and I was there to see. There were steps made with some pain, there were steps made with some risk, and he made those steps despite those risks of not just leaving the game early or leaving the season early or maybe having a shortened career, but he made those steps when they could damage him for life. There was the concussions that he came back much too early from, but went on to play one of the greatest games that any wide receiver has ever played. I think Lynn's intangible attributes are what really makes him a great athlete and an exceptional individual. It's not just his finesse on the field, but his faithfulness to his family, to his friends, to his work, and to his ideas. I've seen that faithfulness in the way he relates to his children, the love he shows for his wife, and the respect and the admiration he has for his parents. It's not just his commitment to being a big game player, but his commitment to causes bigger than he is. Big brothers, big sisters, multiple sclerosis. He was selected NFL Man of the Year in 1981 because of that, because of giving back so much to his community. Len's a man of uncompromising principles and a strong sense of integrity and loyalty. We joked early on when we started talking about his acceptance speech about him saying something profound and leaving everybody with that statement. But after I thought about it for a little while, I thought that, a little note will be placed on what we say, but the far greater emphasis will be placed on our actions or his actions in getting here. Those actions speak profoundly of the caliber of athlete that Len Swann is, but even more to the greatness of the man. Please help me to bring forward one of the greatest wide receivers to ever play the game, my friend, Len Swann.
Thank you. Thank you, Pittsburgh. Thank you, Western Pennsylvania, all of Pennsylvania. Thank you. You have been great fans. Thank you so much. Thank you. I have to say to the Board of Trustees of the Pro Football Hall of Fame, to John Bankert and his staff, to the Commissioner of the National Football League, Paul Tagliabue, to all of the Hall of Famers who have come back today, to my fellow enshrinees, and to the writers who have voted us into the Hall of Fame, I proudly and humbly say thank you very much. It was 14 years on that list before I could stand here today and wear this gold jacket to tell you thank you and how much I love and appreciate how you've supported me over these years. 14 years. But if patience is a virtue, then the virtuous part of that patience is in finding the positives of having to wait so long. The man who introduced me today, John Stallworth, he and I battled day in and day out. We competed for that limited number of passes that we knew that we were going to throw every game on Sunday. And we wanted it desperately. I could not be standing here if it were not for that competitive spirit that I learned from John Stallworth, for his trust and his faith in me as a wide receiver. If we're going to call someone the best, and if you think of me as being the best and I'm number one, well, I think we have to broaden that thinking. It has to be a 1A and a 1AA. I'm not saying who's 1A, but John and I are 1A and 1AA, side by side. I could not be here without the overwhelming support of Dan Rooney and Chuck Noll. I know that last year when Dan Rooney stood here at this podium, as proud as he was to be following in his father's footsteps, who also stood here and accepted the award of being inducted into the Hall of Fame, that he felt that maybe standing here might take something away from a player going into the Hall of Fame. Dan Rooney deserves to be here for his great contribution to this game, regardless of what player does or does not go into the Hall of Fame. He is a cornerstone of the National Football League and keeps this league running in the right direction. So I'm happy that he is standing here behind me, sitting behind me to share in this day, to know I fully appreciate all that he has done. And to Chuck Noll for his unwavering support and saying that I belong here on the steps of Canton. and giving me the opportunity to play this football game. The virtuous part of having this patience also means that the day I was selected to the Hall of Fame this last January couldn't have been a better day, because it would have been the 100th anniversary of the birth of Art Rooney Sr., the founder of this football team. If 14 years had not passed, then I would not be here today with the great patience and support and love of my wife, Charina. And being able to stand here in front of you and having my two sons, Schaefer and Braxton, who are 5 and 3 years old, to be here and be a part of this afternoon. I'm glad 14 years passed, so I could have this love and this family sharing this moment with me. But the beginnings of all of this come from my mother and father and instilling me a faith in God, that if I walked that path and paid attention to the details of life and faith and my family, everything would be okay. Because I'm the youngest of 3 boys, whom my mother named Lynn because she wanted to have a girl. Now, if you thought that was tough, you try leaving football practice with a pair of tights named Lynn at an all-boys Catholic high school. You'll find yourself learning a few moves. I want to thank my mother, because when I was in junior high school, I received a scholarship to go to Sarah High School in San Mateo, California, and I did not want to go to this all-boys Catholic high school. My mother made me go. She made me go, and the foundation of that education and what she instilled in my life have brought me here today. I want to thank my father, Willie Swan. And when I first started playing football against my Miller brother, Calvin, who's also here, Calvin is a much better athlete. And my father said, well, I'm not sure, Lynn, if you're going to be so good. So when he took me out to buy me the football shoes, I wanted the, the really expensive white ones with the stripes and to look really cool. My father said, I don't know, son, I don't know. If we shouldn't be investing that much money in your shoes. You may not be wearing them that long. All right? And I felt kind of bad. But you know what the important thing was? The important thing was my father was with me, and he took me to get those shoes. And he was at every game I ever played. I was not very good. I was not a very good football player when I started out. But I had my family's support. I wanted to be as cool as my oldest brother, Dr. Brian Swan, who is here. And I wanted to be as gifted as my brother Calvin. But I didn't possess their abilities or talents at that age to really move forward. But there were people who helped along the way, like Gene Robinson at College Park Junior High School. There was my coach, Jesse Freitas, at Sarah High School, Nick Carboni, Frank Nolan in basketball, who instilled in me a confidence and gave me a work ethic that said, you can achieve. You heard Ron Yeri talk about an assistant coach at USC, Marv Gu. Marv Gu helped me to grow up to be a man while I was at USC. He taught me tradition, he taught me spirit. He taught me how to stand on my own 2 feet and work hard in the face of adversity. And so Marv Gu, I would thank you from the bottom of my heart for that time. My receiver coach, Willie Brown, gave me the confidence my senior year to go out and achieve, because I did not have the dream of being a professional football player. I thought I was going to be something far different than being a professional football player. I was still going to be Mildred and Willie's baby boy, but I was going to work in some other area. But Willie Brown gave me the confidence my senior year that I could be an All-American player and I could move forward. I was drafted by the Pittsburgh Steelers, and coming from California, Dan Rooney called me up on the phone and said, we're thinking about drafting you. I said, fine. I didn't know much about Pittsburgh. Didn't know much. I knew there was some guy, because every time he called a pass, he was fairly religious, because every time he called a pass, they called it an immaculate reception. I knew he was Irish because his name was Frank O'Harris. I knew there was a guy named Joe Green. They called him Mean Joe Green. And, you know, I was glad he was on my football team. And I knew we were going to a steel town, but I didn't know what that meant. I was determined that I would play football in Pittsburgh and go back to Southern California because I was a California kind of guy. Absolutely through and through. But as the years progressed and I matured, Pittsburgh became home. And I could not have chosen a better place. I could not have chosen a better team to be on. Now, I'm not here because I was that good. I'm here because the people around me made me that good. They made me that good. John Stallworth forced me to work. Going against Jack Ham at practice every day made me work. Watching Franco Harris take the ball, run 40 yards every time he carried the ball made me work. Watching Franco Harris's work in the community day in and day out made me work. Understanding what the tradition was of the Rooney family in Pittsburgh, their sense of giving and community, made me work hard at giving and giving back. These were the things that made our football team great, the sacrifice and the commitment. So I can't stand here in Canton, Ohio, wearing this gold jacket, saying, I did this by myself. But you know what? You're not going to get this jacket off me. This is the single greatest honor in my life. The single greatest honor of my life. And if this is the greatest hour of my life, then I will tell you at this moment, this is only a half hour. It'll be the greatest hour when I can stand and sit in that back row and John Stallworth is wearing a gold jacket making this speech. Jackie Slater talked about confirmation. When you wait on the list for 14 years and you really want to get something bad and you don't go in, you get close, you start thinking about, am I good enough? Did I do enough? Will I ever get there? I found my confirmation in the hearts and the comments of the fans, my family, who always stood behind me and said, when I walked down the street in Pittsburgh, don't worry about it, Swanee, you'll get there next year. You're the man. We believe in you. You should be in the Hall of Fame. And the undying support of Myron Cope when he voted year after year trying to get me into the Hall of Fame, to the magnificent work of Ed Bouchette of the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette and being able to get me into the Hall of Fame and that undying support. That was my confirmation. That is what told me I deserve to be here in Canton in the Hall of Fame. Your support, your unwavering loyalty, and your trust in me that I did the right things when I played football. I want to send out a special message to some friends who could not be here. My best friend in high school, who was my freshman roommate, a swimmer who won a bronze medal in the 1972 Olympics in the 400-meter freestyle, Tom McBreen. Tom has been a lifelong friend and wanted to be here, but sustained an injury to his back and he could not be here. But he's been my friend for more than 34 years. And without that kind of friendship, a lot of things do not happen. I wanted Marv Gu to be here. Obviously, the late John McKay, I wish was still living. My teammates who have passed away, Ray Mansfield and Steve Furness. I wish that they were still here to be a part of this moment. What makes a career, and what I take with me, is certainly a sense of satisfaction of having performed in a big moment. But it's a response and reaction of people who played the game. My happiness and greatest joy in my career and whatever I may have achieved have come from the words of people like Andre Reed, who is sitting here, played for the Buffalo Bills, from Jerry Rice, from the Randy Mosses and Chris Carters, who came up to me at various points in their careers and lives and said, Lynn Swann, you were the man. I wanted to be like you. I wanted to play the game the way you played it. When you have that kind of impact and those caliber players tell you that's what they want to do, then you know in your heart, regardless of whether you stand here or not, you played the very best football a man could possibly play. And you imparted something to the game that was of great value. I stand here proud and humble to be a member of the class of 2001. This is a great moment for me and my family, and a greater moment for the people of Pittsburgh. There is, for me, no great wisdom that I can give you about this game. I can only tell you that what brought me here was the love of my friends who are sitting here, my extended family from California to Pittsburgh, the Hughes, the Gustafsons, the Channons, the Lieblers, the Pearlsteins, people I have loved who have treated me like family, who have gotten me through. My own parents couldn't be there to spend Christmas with, Thanksgiving, and to share hard times and difficult moments. Those are the things that got me through, and the faith of the people here. Before I sit down, I'm going to send one shout out to a man who waited even longer than I did to be inducted into the Hall of Fame. A great Pittsburgher who is going to have a great moment on Sunday. Bill Mazeroski is going into the Hall of Fame in baseball, in Cooperstown. And I know it is going to be the greatest weekend sports history for the city of Pittsburgh we have seen in a very long time, but it will not be the last. It is still more to come. Thank you very much.
Well, brother, you delivered.
Point well made, point taken. For a guy who was an ultimate team player, throw me one ball, I will make the catch. Long overdue.
Well, and it just shows that the numbers don't mean everything. Lynn Swann made the biggest catches maybe in the history of the Pittsburgh Steelers, and certainly you saw his affection for his teammate, John Stallworth. You know, and I always like the idea that no matter how long you have to wait to get in, once you're in, you see the enthusiasm that's projected right there by Lynn Swann. So, you know, it's one of those dreams come true whenever it comes true.
And he certainly made the point that maybe waiting in a way was a good thing, because there's his family now. They're with him. We'll be back to wrap things up from Canton right after this.
The Pro Football Hall of Fame Enshrinement Ceremony is brought to you by Southwest Airlines. Southwest Airlines celebrates 30 years of freedom. 30 years, one mission, low fares.
Over 80 years, thousands of men have played the game. Only 211 are here. 7 new members experienced indescribable emotions today. This group, the Magnificent Seven, certainly played by a different code. Playoffs are next. Arena football, quarterfinals, Arizona, San Jose.